Hi, welcome back guys, this is your friend Caller. What if with another fiction? What if Deku Koda enters magical evolution? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku watched as Toga took down a group of villains. One by one she knocked them out, punching them, slashing them, hitting them with the back of her knife. Izuku felt it was important that Toga feel her progression, so he sent her after a bunch of random thugs in a safe house. Toga disappeared only to reappear behind another thug and knock him unconscious. Should she be using her quirk? Melissa asked. As long as she doesn't leave evidence. The only proof that she ever used her quirk is the word of a bunch of thugs, Izuku said. Izuku watched as Toga took down the last thug. Toga grinned before looking up at Izuku. Izuku nodded, confirming that she did a good job. Yes, Toga cheered. Izuku jumped down next to Toga. You performed as I expected, which is to say excellently. Hehe, keep going, Toga said. Sorry to cut the praise fest, but there's a robbery at a bank nearby. Melissa cut in. The bank is closed, so no one else is there and no alarms are going off either. The only way I found out about it was because of our Robin drones. On it, Izuku said. Did you finish the Batwing's new feature? Yup, Melissa said. New feature? Toga questioned. An extra seat, Izuku explained. Stars appeared in Tonga's eyes. Yes, I can finally ride in the Batwing. I call the front seat. Sorry, but I haven't given you pilot training yet, Izuku said. Oh, Toga deflated. Izuku patted her head, something that he learned she enjoyed very much. Don't worry, you'll get there one day. Meanwhile at the bank, Catman crawled down the side of the bank before stopping onto a window. He let out his claws and cuts a hole in the window. He crawls in and thanks to him being on the wall he avoided the motion sensors on the floor. He took out a disc from his suit and threw it onto the ceiling. The device activated, shutting down all the bank's defenses. The defenses are down, Catman said. Back outside, a van parked outside the bank opened up, revealing the rest of the League of Thieves. Atomic Man walked up to the bank door and activated his quirk. Conversion beams. He can shoot beams out of his eyes that can change a non-organic object's state of matter. He melted the door and the rest of the crew walked in. Catman jumped down and joined them as they walked to the safe. Atomic Man blasted the safe, melting it and giving them full access to the goods inside. We're in the safe, Catman said, grabbing the loot. They each took a bag and started grabbing cash, shoving as much as they could in them. Batman will be approaching soon, Calendar Man said over the comms. He will appear behind Catman in approximately 30 seconds. Any attempt by Catman to attack him will be countered. Calendar Man. His quirk allows him to view into one day a month and see any and all events that happen on that day from a third-person perspective. He can only do this once a month, so he can't see how his action alters the outcome of what he saw. Got it? Chancer said. The seconds passed and Catman could feel Batman behind him and ducked down. Chancer shot at Batman with his high-power laser blaster, and Batman flipped backwards into the center of the bank floor. Suddenly the chandelier that was hanging above him came loose and dropped down, hitting Izuku and knocking him down. Gah! Izuku grunted as he pulled himself from under the now broken chandelier. Chancer, his quirk is called Luck. It does exactly what it sounds like. Bad luck, partner, Chancer said. Red Hood is most likely going to attack Chancer from behind while invisible, Calendar Man warned. Catman clawed the empty air behind Chancer and hit Toga, causing her to become visible. Toga quickly recovered and slipped back to Izuku's side. Now Quilt, Calendar Man said. Behold, Crazy Quilt said as a bright multicolored light shot out in front of him, engulfing the two. What the? Toga yelps. Suddenly everything went dark. Hey, I can't see, Toga said. Crazy Quilt, he can emit a light that will blind anyone in its way. The downside is it makes him just as blind. Izuku couldn't see either. Of course, he could still fight without his eyes. But Toga, to his knowledge, could not. He couldn't risk her safety. And these guys seem to have an unknown advantage. The best option would be to retreat. Izuku grabbed Toga and dropped a smoke pellet, fleeing away from the bank. Do not pursue. We have the money we need to erase the evidence and get out before more heroes arrive, Calendar Man said. I thought we shut down the alarms, Chancer pointed out. Yes, but Batman had likely already contacted the authorities during the fight, meaning you need to move. Now, Calendar Man said. With Batman out of the way, the crew hauled the money into the van. The eraser ran out last after using his quirk on all the things they broke. The eraser, his quirk allows him to reverse time on any non-living object within a small area. Suddenly everything went back to how it was before they came. The chandelier went back up, the safe and door. Later at the Batcave. So what happened? Melissa asked the two. Because we just lost to B-rank villains. They were coordinated, Izuku said. Not to mention they had some high-tech devices. Given what we know about those villains, they are most likely receiving outside help. And I can't learn anything from the crime scene because they erased all the evidence. I say we could have taken them. Toga pouted. The fight was going in a bad direction. Staying would have been an unnecessary risk, Izuku said. Besides, I doubt that this will be the last we see of them. Now we can do some investigating and make a plan. I'll analyze the video from your cowl and make some gear to counter them if I can, Melissa said. And I'll eat some ice cream, Toga added. Later. For now, I need you to train on how to fight without your sight, Izuku said. Can we at least get a softer floor? Toga whined, knowing she'd be hitting the ground for the rest of the day. If I did that, then you wouldn't learn as fast, Izuku said. Toga groaned. A month later. It was a quiet night at the Asafu Museum, and the League of Thieves intended to keep it that way. Catman crawled through the vents, entering the museum through a vent on the wall. He took the disc before throwing it onto the ceiling, shutting down all the security. Security down. Move in, Catman said. Moving out of the same van, the team moved out. Atomic Man melted the doors, alerting the guards. Freeze, one of the guards said, before attempting to pull out his gun. Chancer acted fast and threw one of his batons at his head, knocking him out. The guard in the monitor room was freaking out as he tried to get all the cameras to work again. He turned on the alarm, but it didn't work. What's going on? Suddenly he was knocked out by Catman. The guards are down. Let's move fast, maybe we can get out of here before Batman gets here, Catman said. No, Batman is going to get here, Calendar Man said. He's going to lose, however, so you don't need to worry. The crew walked towards the destination with Catman joining them along the way until they reached the case where their prize was stored. The Kachona diamond. Atomic Man melted the case and Catman was about to grab the diamond when Calendar Man spoke. A batarang is about to come at you. Catman ducked and the batarang went over his head. They looked up to see Batman and Red Hood standing behind them. Time for round 2, Toga said with a sadistic smirk on her face. And time for you to witness my beautiful blast a second time, Crazy Quilt said, unleashing his quirk onto both of them. Gah, no fair, Toga complained as she was blinded. I won't be able to see myself kicking your butts. Shut up, why don't you? Atomic Man said, sending a blast at her to melt her armor. He's sending a blast at your front, Melissa said over the comms. Toga dodged the blast with ease and threw a knife at Atomic Man, making a gash in his arm. Too slow, Toga taunted. Little did the villains know that one of Izuku's mechanical robins was perched upon one of the flagpoles in the museum directly above the fight, allowing Melissa to view the whole thing from above and give Toga direction. Catman threw a catarang at Izuku, who dodged with ease. Hey, don't be a copycat, Toga scowled. Was that a pun? Catman asked. Chancer charged at Izuku with his batons in hand, but Izuku simply grabbed them and kicked Chancer away, before throwing his batons at Eraser, causing him to fall. Suddenly the sprinkler system began to malfunction and sprayed water on the fighter's bellow. Catman charged at Izuku and swiped at him with his claws, but Izuku just dodged each attack before grabbed Catman's arm and punched him in the face. Catman staggered back and smirked. Gotcha. Suddenly Izuku was blasted in the back by Atomic Man, freezing all the water on his suit and trapping him in ice. Bouncy, Toga shouted, getting distracted momentarily. Keep your eyes on the fight, Atomic Man said before freezing the ground around her. Well, Toga said as she tried not to trip. Chancer took out his blaster and shot Toga, causing her to go flying into a wall. Activate anti-freeze, Izuku said. His armor started to heat up, melting the ice until it was weak enough for Izuku to break out. Hood, we're retreating, Izuku said. Toga quickly made her way to Izuku's side and he dropped a flash bomb, making the villains close their eyes. When they opened them again, they were gone. Damn ninjas, Chancer said. That's enough. Eraser, do your job and get out, Calendar Man said. Meanwhile, Izuku and Toga landed on the rooftop. Did you get it? Toga asked. Yes, Izuku said, pulling out one of the discs that Catman had. Flashback. So here is the plan, Izuku said. When we encounter them next, we fight them and pretend to lose. What, why? Toga asked. Let me finish, Izuku said. During the fight, I'll take some of their tech and then we'll retreat. Oh, I get it, Melissa said. We know that someone is giving them tech, so if we grab some of it, we'll be able to track it back to the maker. And once we get to the maker, then we can make him talk, Izuku said. Oh, Toga said. I get it now. But why can't we just beat them and then take their stuff? If we beat them, then their supplier will be on high alert, and finding them will be more difficult, Izuku explained. Oh, Toga repeated. That makes sense. Back to the present. Yes, Toga cheered. High five. You're facing the wrong direction, Melissa said to Toga, who is still blind. High five, Toga repeated after turning around. Izuku smiled and gave her a high five. How could he not when she had such contagious energy? Our job's not done yet, Izuku said. Melissa, send the Batwing to our location. It's already coming, Melissa said. Wait, can you drive while you're blind too? Toga asked in amazement. No, I'm piloting the thing remotely, Melissa explained. Oh, wait a minute. If she can do that, then that means I could sit in the front seat. Toga realized. Himiko, don't act like you wouldn't have pressed every button you could, Melissa said. Toga pouted. I wouldn't have pressed every button. just most of them. A few days later, Toymaker smiled as he looked at his newest creation. It was an upgrade to Chancer's batons. All right, the Toymaker said to himself. Now I just need to. Thunk. Suddenly a knife was pressed into the workbench in front of him. He turned around and saw Toga standing there behind him. Hi, she said with a very disturbing grin on her face. Red Hood, Toymaker said, recognizing her costume. Well, why isn't my security activating? Oh, Batsy's taking care of that. Toga lied. In truth, Izuku had already taken care of the security and just wanted to see how Toga handled an interrogation. Toga picked up the knife and brought her face closer to his. That means you and I get to have some fun. Please don't hurt me, Toyman begged, trembling in his seat. Oh, but hurting you is the best part, Toga said, her already massive grin getting even bigger. But I guess I could have fun somewhere else. Suddenly Toga picked up Toymaker before slamming him into the workbench and sticking the knife right next to his face. Do you have any suggestions on where I could find my new playmates? A month later. You're late, Catman said as Chancer finally arrived in the meeting room. Send me fine, Chancer said sarcastically. That's enough, Calendar Man said. We are all here, so now we can talk about this month's plan. Our target is this. A projector lit up showing Arcane Bank. We'll act as usual, Calendar Man said. Except Batman won't be showing up this time. Finally, Atomic Man said. He and Red Hood were getting annoying. Essentially that Red Hood chick. What is she even, like 12? Eraser said. I think she's 15, Catman said. Back to the plan, Calendar Man said loudly. You will go to get the money and get out. This will be happening tomorrow. Tomorrow, Atomic Man said. Isn't that a bit soon? Penguin wants more money and he wants it now, Calendar Man said. Speaking of which, where the hell is he? Chancer asked. He just showed up, made us a team, and takes a cut whenever we steal something. Who do you think is financing your new equipment? Calendar Man said. Penguin is our financial backer. Nothing more, nothing less. This meeting is over. Leave and stop wasting my time. I have preparations to make. After all the villains left, Calendar Man sat in silence for a few moments before bursting into sadistic giggles. The next night. You guys hear that? Chancer said, grabbing money from the vault. That's the sound of no Batman. I know. You think we'll get this lucky next time too? Atomic Man asked. I was hoping for another chance to show off my colors, Crazy Quilt said with a hint of disappointment. Something feels off, Catman said. It feels too easy. You're thinking too much about it, Eraser said. We got the money, so let's just get out of. Freeze. Suddenly bright lights from police copters lit up the windows and police sirens could be heard outside. Best Jeanist and a few other heroes ran into the bank. Surrender and come quietly, or else. What? Chancer said. Calendar Man, what the fuck? Atomic Man said. Suddenly all of them could hear Calendar Man laughing over the comms. And as he laughed, his voice changed and distorted until he sounded like a young girl. Gotcha. Toga laughed. We've been tricked, Catman said. Suddenly their clothes tightened, keeping them from moving. You are all under arrest, Best Jeanist said. A few minutes later, Izuku stood outside the bank with Commissioner Naomasa, watching as the villains were carted away. Once again you've impressed me, Naomasa said. We found no way of even finding out who was responsible for these robberies, and you put them away in just 2 months. You really are the world's greatest detective, Izuku finished. I wouldn't say that's accurate, but thank you nonetheless. I never really got to thank you for saving everyone from the poison ivy, Naomasa said. I'm ashamed of how easy it was to turn me into her puppet. You don't need to feel that way, Izuku said. Ivy was a dangerous foe. If I had been caught unprepared, she could have easily controlled or killed me. I suppose it was kind of a good thing you're not an official hero then, Naomasa said. At least at that point. I have things I need to do, Izuku said. Things that I can't do as a pro hero. But that doesn't mean I want to be completely disconnected from the police and pros. Are you suggesting a partnership? Naomasa asked. Something like that, Izuku said. Well, I'll think about it, Naomasa said. Izuku nodded. Good. Now if you excuse me, I have a date with a bird. Later with Penguin. What do you mean they got caught? Penguin shouted at one of his underlings. It was Batman, sir. He caught him somehow. The thug said. Penguin squawked. Get out. The thug ran out of his office and Penguin started tossing things around his office in a rage. I would suggest you control your temper. Penguin pulled out his umbrella and aimed it at Izuku, who was standing behind him. Batman, Penguin growled. Let me guess, you're here to take me to Ha. Well, it won't be that easy. Penguin pulled the trigger on the handle and the tip of the umbrella shot out a bullet. Izuku's mouth guard sprung up and blocked the shot, deflecting it elsewhere in the room. That's enough, Izuku said, grabbing the umbrella and snapping it over his knee. I have enough evidence to put you away for good, Penguin. And I have enough money to outbribe any judge. It's over. No, this can't be, Penguin said. Suddenly the bird-themed villain got an idea. Wait, you're the one who's been asking about frightening Bolt, right? Penguin asked. I have all the information there is on that guy. Everything he's ever done. Izuku froze for a second before getting right in front of Penguin. his shadow engulfing him as his eyes gazed into his. "You're going to tell me everything you know," Izuku said. "Now, well, this is certainly enough to put Bolt away forever," Naomasa said, looking through the papers Izuku gave him. "And no doubt this will help Penguin's case. At this point, the worst we can do to him is take away some of his resources and put him under house arrest." Izuku lied. In truth, Izuku withheld a good chunk of the evidence against Penguin. He didn't let him fully off the hook, but he had definitely gone easy on him. Something Izuku was sure to let him know was a one-time thing. "Well, I'll send some men after Bolt," Naomasa said. "No," Izuku objected quickly. "I want to deal with this one myself." Naomasa raised an eyebrow. "Why? He doesn't seem like much of a threat." "Just trust me," Izuku said. "Please," Naomasa sighed. "Alight. I'll have the police on standby ready to pick him up. Don't make me regret this." "I won't," Izuku said. Meanwhile, elsewhere, frightening Bolt aka Maximilian Zeus was in the office of one of his warehouses counting his money after another successful drug deal. "Life is good," Bolt said. "But for how long?" Bolt instantly responded, looking up from his cash to see a large man standing over him. He was huge and had on a black and white mask that looked like something Mexican wrestler would wear. Bolt activated his quirk, charging up his hand and pointing at the man. "Who the fuck are you?" "That is none of your concern," said the man. "What is your concern is that someone is coming for you." "What?" Bolt asked. "Who the hell would be stupid enough to come after a pro hero? How about the man who goes around exposing corrupt pros like yourself?" the man said. A confused look crossed Bolt's face before turning into that of horrified realization. "Shit," Bolt said. "Fuck, the Batman is coming after me. He's had his eye on you for some time." The man said. "He's compiled all evidence that will reveal everything you have ever done." Shit, Bolt cursed. "However," the man said, "I have something that may help you." Bolt instantly looked up at the man with fleeting hope and desperation in his eyes. "What? What is it? What do you want?" "I'll give you anything if you can get the bat off me." "I will not be getting rid of the bat." "You will," the man said, taking out a green vial out of his pocket. With this, Bolt looked at the green vial suspiciously. "What is that?" "Trigger." The man shook his head. "No, this is something far greater than trigger. This is venom. If you take it, then you may kill that bat with your own 2 hands. Bolt looked at him warily before saying, "What the hell? I don't really have any other options, so fuck it." And he took the veil. Later with Izuku. Izuku was in the Batwing with Toga, ready to face his mother's killer once and for all. "Something's wrong," Melissa said over the comms. "What?" Izuku asked. "Frightening Bolt has moved," Melissa reported. "He ran to a building that's still under construction." "Did someone tip him off?" "Penguin is under heavy surveillance, so it can't be him," Izuku said. "Oh, maybe it's someone else," Toga suggested. "Like some kind of mysterious mastermind who manipulating everything behind the scenes and is getting stronger and stronger each day." "I mean, maybe it's connected to whoever it was who gave Poison Ivy that venom stuff," Melissa said. "But that would be a huge coincidence and is really unlikely." "Anyway, Toga, I want you to stay back," Izuku said. "My armor is insulated with a non-conductive material, so he won't be any threat." "So why am I here?" Toga asked. "Because if we asked you to stay, then you probably would have come," Izuku answered. Toga giggled. "You know me so well." "We're approaching the drop point," Izuku said. "Get ready." A few minutes later, Izuku walked through the incomplete building. "It's time," Izuku muttered to himself. "Everything I've done since that day has been in preparation for this moment." He was sweating slightly under his armor, and his heartbeat was slightly faster as was his breathing. But he wasn't nervous, just enraged. He could see him through his detective vision, just sitting there in one of the incomplete rooms. Maybe he was trying to go for a surprise attack. It wouldn't matter. Tonight this ended. "Mouthguard," Izuku said, activating his mouthguard. He stood right outside the entrance to the room that Bolt was sitting in. After taking a moment to compose himself, he walked into the room. Bolt didn't move. He didn't attack. He just sat there in a fancy-looking chair looking out through the incomplete wall. "Frightening Bolt," Izuku said before shaking his head. "No, calling you by your so-called hero name would be inaccurate, considering you're no longer a pro hero." Bolt laughed. "How right you are, Batman." He stood up and turned around to face Izuku, with his mask down and his white hair exposed. "That time is over," Bolt said. "I have exceeded and regained my true status." Bolt activated his quirk, except instead of just his hands lighting up his entire body, his eyes glowing blue with power. "Izuku, something's wrong," Melissa said. "His voltage level of off the charts. You call me Zeus," Bolt said, and then everything went black. Outside, Toga waited outside the building whistling. "Man, I expected the clash between Batsy and the guy who killed his mom to be more exciting," she thought. Kaboom! Suddenly one of the walls above her exploded with a bolt of lighting, sending Izuku's limp body flying out, falling towards the ground. "I take it back. Go back to boring," Toga shouted. She took out her grappled gun and fired it before rocketing upwards. She caught Izuku in her free arm and landed in one of the incomplete rooms. "Is he okay?" Toga asked as she set down Izuku, who was unconscious. I don't know, Melissa said. The lighting must have been so strong it burned through the insulation and short-circuited the armor. I can't see his vitals. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning burst through the floor, wildly shaking the building. Come out, Batman, and face your divine retribution, shouted Zeus. Toga grit her teeth in anger. I've called the heroes. Just get out of there, Melissa said. Toga ignored her. No one hurts my Batsy. Without another word, she took a vial of blood from her utility belt. Meanwhile, with Zeus, come out, coward, he shouted as he sent more bolts of lighting in almost every direction. You have no right to call anyone a coward. Suddenly, vines came through the floor and smacked Zeus through the ceiling. Quickly recovering, he got up and looked for the vine, only for another vine to sneak up on him and wrapped around him. The vine carried him to Toga, who was now a perfect copy of Poison Ivy. I'll splatter your blood all over the building, Toga shouted as she commanded the vines to squeeze Zeus in an attempt to crush him. RAHH, Zeus roared as his body was enveloped by electricity, weakening the vines, allowing him to break free. Gah, Toga grunted as the lighting singed her arm. Zeus aimed his arm at her and shot a bolt of lightning. Toga put up a wall of vines in the nick of time, blocking the attack. Toga summoned a Venus flytrap below him, breaking the floor and making him fall into the flytrap's jaw. RAHH, Zeus let off a massive explosion of electricity, destroying the flytrap and zapping Toga out of the building. Toga summoned a vine to catch her and willed it to lift her to the roof of the building. Soon enough, Zeus followed, rising to the top of the building using a chunk of metal he manipulated with his powers. You think you can fight a god? Zeus shouted. Arrogant mortal. I will. Oh, shut up, Toga said, summoning a vine and knocking him off the chunk of metal onto the rooftop floor. Toga could feel her time was running out. Using a person's quirk reduced the amount of time she could stay transformed as them. I need to end this fast, she thought. Using all her strength, she summoned dozens of vines that surrounded the building completely. Zeus saw this and started powering up, his body glowing electric blue with lighting pouring out of him. Rah, Toga screeched as she sent every vine at him at once. Just before the vines were about to crush him, Zeus unleashed his full power. TRACAKACROOM. Blue light enveloped the building and an enormous lightning bolt could be seen piercing the sky for miles. After the light died down, the result of the fight could be seen. Zeus was unharmed if slightly exhausted, panting and heaving but still standing. Toga, on the other hand, was barely conscious. Her disguise had melted away and she was laying on the floor in a pile of the goop that was left behind after she used her quirk. Zeus laughed triumphantly. You see, I am a god. You are a mere child. Suddenly, news helicopters who had seen the giant bolt of lighting and came to see what it was. Zeus looked up and smiled. Mortal, witness my might, and look at what happens when you oppose me. He turned his attention back to Toga and walked up to her until he was standing over. He activated his quirk and held up his hand. And now, I shall strike you down. Just as Zeus was about to strike, he heard something. The flapping of wings. Bats suddenly appeared and started circling around the building. More and more bats appeared, freaking out Zeus. What sort of trick is this? He shouted. Batman, show your Ga. A bat swooped down and scratched his eye. You stupid Ga. Zeus shrieked as more bats came down and attacked him, biting and clawing and scratching at his face. Get off, he shouted, using his quirk to electrocute all the bats on him, but that still left the bats circling the building. He opened his eyes to see that Toga was no longer in front of him. Zeus, Team Izuku's voice, sounding as if it was coming from everywhere at once. What inappropriate for a pathetic man trying to play God. Ga, Zeus shouted as he shot lighting around, wilding into the cyclone of bats, to very little effect. Cyclone started to close in. Slowly the bats got closer and closer to him. You take money because you want to pretend to be above everyone, Izuku said. You have sex with women against their wills because that's what gods like Zeus do. Shut up, Zeus said, desperately trying to hit his unseen foe only to hit a few bats. You killed my mother because gods don't care about the lives of mortals, Izuku said. But you're not a god. You're nothing but scum. Lower than the dirt. Enough, Zeus shouted, his body getting exhausted from overusing his quirk. I am a god. I am the ruler of all the gods, Zeus. Who the hell do you think you are, defying me? Then the bats enveloped him. I am vengeance. Ga, Zeus shouted as one of his arms was broken by Izuku, who he couldn't see through the bats. I am the night. Ra, Zeus's other arm was broken and he was punched through the bats and out of the cyclone, breaking his ribs. Zeus looked in horror as the bats dispersed, revealing Izuku standing over him. I am Batman. Izuku punched him in the face, knocking him down and out. Izuku looked at his unconscious foe before dropping to his knees. It's over, Mom, he said quietly. I got him. Later, Izuku watched as Zeus was carted away into the holding van with Naomasa at his side. I didn't think Bolt had that kind of power, Naomasa said. He didn't, Izuku said shakily. Trigger can't do something like this either, meaning that it's probably the same substance that Ivy used. Venom, Naomasa sighed, as if Trigger wasn't bad enough. And speaking of ivy, Yamasa looked over at the dead vines that were all around the building. The footage from the news copters showed Poison Ivy fighting Bolt, and then after the flash, Red Hood was there. Yamasa pointed out, "Don't waste your time," Izuku said. "You know how courts and rich people work. I just wanted to warn you, that's all." As far as everybody else knows, a hero with a plant-based quirk stepped on the screen to help out. The news will only be able to play certain parts of what they recorded. Yamasa said, "I'm really glad you decided to take this on yourself. Seeing as Bolt wasn't much of a threat until now, I probably just would have sent in some low-ranking heroes. And with how powerful Bolt got, that would have been disastrous." Suddenly the Batwing flew overhead, lowering until it was on the ground. Toga was already in the back seat, sleeping off her injuries. "It was nice talking to you, Commissioner," Izuku said, walking towards the Batwing. "But I need to go." "You sure you don't want to get those injured checked out?" Yamasa asked with slight concern. "I'll be fine," Izuku said, jumping into the front seat. "Besides, I have better medical equipment at home." With that, Izuku took off into the night sky. Meanwhile, elsewhere, in a dark room, a man watched multiple monitors that showed camera feeds from the building Izuku, Toga, and Zeus had fought in. A masked man smiled. It seems that even at this level, the venom still caused him to lose his mind. "Oh well, it looks like more tinkering will be required." The man focused his attention on the monitor showing Batman defeating Zeus. "Batman," the man said. "A true fighter if I ever saw one." The man laughed sinisterly. "I will enjoy breaking you." Toga woke up with a yawn. She opened her eyes and saw her room, illuminated with nothing but the sunlight coming in from the window. "Man, this room is a plane," Toga thought to herself. Jumping out of her bed, she went into her private bathroom and got herself ready for the day. "Wait, what time is?" Toga questioned as she brushed her teeth. She looked up at the clock and her eyes widened. 6 o'clock. Crap, I'm late. Quickly she finished brushing her teeth and got dressed. She opened the door only to find Alfred standing outside with a tray. "Jeeves, please move, I have to get to Batsy. If I'm late, he'll make me kiss the floor more than he usually does. And that's a lot," Toga said, trying to squeeze past the butler. "There is no need to worry, Lady Himiko. Master Izuku has given you the day off, in celebration of your latest victory," Alfred revealed. "Phew," Toga sighed with relief. "That's great. So what you got under the lid, Jeeves?" "I do wish you would stop calling me that," Alfred sighed before lifting the lid. On the tray was a plate of bacon and eggs, a cup of blood, a phone, and a credit card with a bat on it. "Is that a bat credit card?" Toga asked. "Yes," Alfred sighed. "Lady Melissa insisted that it have a bat on it. At this point, I wonder what they won't put a bat on." "Won't this give away that I work with Batsy?" Toga asked, looking over the card. "No one would think Batman would put a bat on something like a credit card, and as such everyone will likely assume that it's not related to him in the slightest," Alfred reassured her. "Mate," Toga said, pocketing the card. "I would suggest you go out after eating," Alfred said. "If you would like, I can drive you to any place you wish to go. And before you ask, no, not in the Batmobile." "No thanks, Jeeves," Toga said. "You got enough on your plate as it is. Don't want to overwork you or else you'll just keel over. And you know what they say, a dead butler is of no use to anyone." "I don't think that Lady Melissa has heard of such an expression," Alfred said with a slight smile. "I'm sure if I were to perish, Lady Melissa would still be asking me to serve her lunch. Which, to be fair, I'm almost certain anything made by my dead body would still be miles better than what she attempts to call cooking." "I heard that," Melissa said in the distance. The two laughed before Toga took the food back into her room. Later, Toga walked through the mall looking at the stores as she passed. "This is a bit nostalgic," she thought to herself. "It's been so long since I've been here after all. I can hardly remember walking here with my friends." Toga frowned and stopped walking. "Friends," she thought. "I can't really call them that, can I? All they knew was a mask, an act, and they never really made me feel any less lonely. The spaces next to me felt just as empty as they do now. Why did I ever do that? Why did I ever build that fake life? Who was it for?" She knew the answer to that. It was obvious. It was for her parents. It was always for her parents. Everything she did, every act she put on, every lie she told herself, it was all for them, so they could have a normal daughter. And when she didn't want to act anymore, when she wanted to be herself, Toga flinched as she remembered the feeling of her father's hand hitting her face. She shook her head. "That's over now. I'm not that fake girl anymore. I'm Toga Himiko, Red Hood, a crime fighter that beats up bad guys outside the law with Batman." Speaking of Batman, Toga looked up and realized that she had stopped outside of a hero merch store, and front and center were Batman products. Batman figures, cowls, fake batarangs, and shirts. Toga's eyes sparkled, and she walked into the store. She grabbed several items, putting them all in Batman-themed bag. Was it weird that she was buying products of a guy she worked with? Yeah, but Toga was never really normal, and she wasn't going to act like she was. She was going to do what she wanted to do and buy what she wanted to buy, and no one would stop her. "Stop," shouted a guy entering the store holding up his hands which looked like guns. Everyone stop and get down. Or else. Everyone but Toga got on the ground. Toga looked behind her making sure no one was there before giggling. What the hell is so funny? The thief asked pointing his finger guns at Toga. What are the odds? Toga laughed. You must have really bad luck. Are you making fun of me? The villain yelled. Take. Before he could finish his sentence or attack Toga, she dashed at him moving closing the distance between them in an instant. Ep! He shrieked as Toga kicked him in the balls stunning him, before slamming his head onto the checkout counter. There was a brief silence before the whole store got up and applauded. Toga smiled at the crowd giving them a wave before picking up her bag and going to buy the items. As she was leaving the store someone called out to her. Hey, wait up. She turned around and saw 4 people approaching her. One looked like some kind of pink alien. Another was a black-haired rich-looking girl. The third looked almost identical to the other one, the only difference being that the other one had a ponytail and she did not. Lastly, a boy was standing behind them holding bags. He had purple hair and eyes and looked really tired. You looked really cool back there, the pink girl said. Yeah, it was really badass, the non-ponytailed black-haired girl said. Sister, language, the ponytail girl scolded. Badass is not a curse, Toga and the non-ponytailed girl said at the same time. It contains the word. Why, you know what it contains. The ponytailed girl said, her face slightly red. That doesn't make it curse. The pink girl said. Fuck is a curse word. So is shit. The non-ponytailed girl said. Also ass, Toga added. And the pink girl was cut off by the ponytail girl, whose face was now very red, putting her hands over her mouth. I get it, she said. You don't need to say every swear in the book, darn it. Language, said everyone else except for the purple-haired guy. How is darn a curse? The ponytail girl asked. Because if you say darn that means you wanted to say damn. Toga explained. When it comes to cursing it's the thought that counts. The pink girl said. Yeah, don't be such a hypocrite, sis. The non-ponytailed girl said. I give up. The ponytail girl said, burying her face in her hands. The 3 other girls laughed while the purple-haired boy rolled his eyes. After they stopped laughing, the pink one introduced herself. I'm Mina Ashido, she said. Just call me Mina. Name's Helena Yaoyorozu. And before you ask about my name, my dad was American. The non-ponytailed girl said before pointing to the ponytail girl. And that's my sister, Momo. Mom picked her name. And the guy in the back is Shinso Hitoshi, Mina said, introducing him. Hey, Toga said, waving at Shinso. Hello, Shinso said unenthusiastically. Well, someone's grumpy, Toga said with a pout. Don't mind him, we just brought him here to carry our stuff and show him what a social life is, Helena said. From what I've seen I wasn't missing much, Shinso added. I only came because you said carrying your stuff would be good exercise. And judging from the pain in my back, arms and legs, you were probably right. Anyway, what you did in that store was so cool, Mina gushed. You had that guy down in seconds. Yeah, it was super easy, Toga bragged. No problem at all. I mean, would have rather you waited for a hero. But you did a good job quickly and efficiently taking down the villain, Momo said. Oh, you're one of those super proper but super nice rich girls, right? Toga said, pointing right at Momo. Wow, sis, she figured you out in like 30 seconds. Helena snickered while Momo blushed some more. My name is Himiko Toga, Toga said cheerfully. You can call me Himiko. A confused expression crossed Momo's face, but before she could speak, Mina spoke first. Hey, you wanna hang out with us? She asked. Toga paused. This is it. These could be my first real friends. Yes, Toga said excitedly. Cool, just throw your bag on Shinso, Mina said. I'm not a pack mule, you know, Shinso said. Of course you aren't, Helena said. Mules don't complain. Toga gave Shinso her bag and the 5 started walking through the mall. So you like Batman? Helena asked. Yup, he's the best, Toga said. He's so cool, Mina gushed. That line he said to Frightening Bolt on the news was probably the most badass thing I've ever seen. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman, Helena said in a mock deep voice. He's like a hero in a comic book. I think what he's doing is rather irresponsible, Momo said. He's exploiting a loophole in order to commit vigilantism. He disrespects the spirit of the law. Considering all the fakes heroes he exposed, I don't think you can make a reasonable argument that what he's doing is bad, Shinso said. Yeah, sis, have you seen the shit that Bolt did? Helena asked in disgust. With heroes like that, what do we need villains for? Granted, Batman has done a lot of good for the city. I'm just saying that he should have done it in a more legal fashion, Momo said, like by becoming a detective or a pro-hero himself. Yeah, because the hero system loves when you expose its flaws, Toga said sarcastically. Yeah, I doubt Batman could have been half as effective with all the freaking politicians and paperwork getting in his way, Shinso remarked. I stand by my point, Momo said. A few hours later. Wow, so you all go to UA, Toga said in slight amazement. After shopping for hours, the gang decided to stop at an ice cream shop. Yup, and we're all in the same class, Helena bragged. Class 1A. don't sound so proud. You and your sister got in on recommendation, Shinso said. Hey, that's still super impressive, Mina protested. It's fine, Momo said. Given how hard Shinso worked to get in, I can't blame him for being a little bitter. Oh yeah, I heard you broke a lot of bones and were covered in blood by the end of it, Helena exposited. You were covered in blood? Toga asked a bit enthusiastically. Yeah, Shinso said, giving her a strange look. Fighting robots with a quirk that only affects humans isn't pleasant, but I had to do it if I want to be a hero. Toga imagined Shinso punching robots until his hands were bloody. Cool. In case you're wondering, the robots have an off switch on the back of their heads. That's how I was able to beat them, Shinso explained. Oh, Toga said. Still cool. She was tempted to ask what his quirk was, but if she did, they would probably ask her about her quirk and she needed a bit more time before she... I knew the name Toga sounded familiar, Momo said, looking at her phone. You're that girl who went missing a while ago. Toga froze as Momo showed everyone a news site detailing her disappearance. It says that you just vanished without a trace one day, Mina said. Toga looked down away from the others. Yup. Why? Momo asked. Your family was rather well off and you had a lot of friends. Why did you run away? Yeah, your parents must be worried sick, Mina said. Toga didn't respond. Suddenly Helena yanked the phone out of Momo's hands. Always read the full article, sis, she said before looking down at the phone. Toga Himeko disappeared. Little is known about her disappearance, but shortly afterward her parents disowned her. What? Shouted Mina and Momo at the same time. Why? Shinso looked at them with shocked eyes and piqued interest. I don't know. The article stops here, Helena said with a disgusted look on her face. I should tell them, Toga thought to herself. No more lying. If I want to have real friends, I need to show them the real me. It's because of my quirk. Toga worked up the courage to say. Your quirk? Shinso questioned. He had a feeling he knew where this going, and he didn't like it. It lets me transform into people after drinking their blood, Toga explained. But it also makes me really into blood. Its color, its smell, its taste. I love it. A villainous quirk, Shinso said, gritting his teeth. Of course, they wanted me to be normal, to act like a normal girl, Toga said, her tone starting to get angrier. So I pretended to be normal. I acted like somebody else, but my life felt empty. All my friendships were built on lies. Then one day I met Batsy. Batsy? Mina questioned. I think she means Batman, Helena said, the disgusted look never leaving her face. He told me to just me and not to let anyone tell me who I am, Toga said passionately, remembering the moment that changed her life for the better. So I fought back against my parents and they disowned me. There was a pause before Helena suddenly got up and hugged her. Hey, Toga said, not expecting this. I'm glad you got away from those assholes, she said. I know having rich parents can suck, but yours just sound like the fucking worst. Yeah, no parent should abandon their daughter just because they don't like her quirk, Mina shouted. Shameful, Momo said. Truly disgusting behavior. I will have to warn mother and father not to do business with such dubious individuals. Toga's smile grew bigger and bigger as her new friends spoke. This looked like it was actually going well. Himeko, Shinso said, getting everyone's attention. My quirk is called brainwashing. It lets me control whoever responds to me. Okay, Toga said, no really getting where he was going with this. All my life people called my quirk evil. They said I was a future villain. Shinso explained. That's one of the reasons I want to be a hero. To prove them wrong. You don't need to worry about me treating you any differently. Toga's smile went from ear to ear and she launched herself at Shinso, making them both fall onto the floor while Toga wrapped him in her embrace. We're evil quirk buddies, she said giddily. Please don't call me that. Shinso groaned. Too late, Toga giggled. That was sweet, Shinso, Momo commented. Well, since we're exchanging tragic backstories, I might as well speak up, Shinso said sarcastically. No, can you please get off of me? Nope, Toga said, picking them both off the floor while still hugging him. Group hug. What no? Shinso said, trying to get out. How are you this strong? Just accept your fate, Shinso, Mina said with a devilish smile as she hugged the two. Momo looked a bit tentative. I don't know if we should be doing this in public. Helena promptly grabbed her and forced her into the hug. Shinso sighed. I guess this is my life now. Then again, this isn't so bad. Later, as the sun went down, the group exited the mall, Toga having taken her bags back. Hey Himeko, if you're homeless, then how did you get that credit card? Helena asked. Who said I was homeless? Toga responded. Someone very nice took me in and let me use the credit card. Who? Momo asked. Toga held a finger over her lips. It's a secret. They gave her a strange look before shrugging their shoulders. Well, if you need us, you can always call us, Helena said, reminding her that they had put their numbers in their phone. Okay, Toga said. See ya. Toga walked away from her new friends with a big smile on her face. Today was amazing, she thought to herself. I got some cute stuff from my room and I made 3 real friends. As Toga walked, she saw in the corner of her eye a familiar sight. Her home, her parents' home. I forgot it was this close, she thought to herself. She looked at the house with a mixture of sadness, rage, and longing. The rational part of her brain told her to just keep walking, maybe even run. But the irrational part of her wanted to try something else. And unfortunately for Toga, she was never a very rational person. Meanwhile in the Toga household, so what about this one? Mrs. Toga Aka Monona Toga said, showing her husband, Gomi Toga, a picture of a child. No, that one is too small, Gomi said, and their hair is blue. If we are going to adopt, then we need to make sure that we can convince people she's not adopted. Trying to replace me already. Both of them jumped in surprise and looked behind them to see Himiko standing there. You, how dare you come back here, demon child? Gomi hissed. Did you see what I did? Toga asked. I saved people, Monona scoffed. You mean going around gallivanting in that disgusting hoodie of yours? You think running around with that criminal Batman is anything to be proud of? The only reason we haven't exposed your identity is because we would not be able to bear the shame. Batman is a hero, Toga said bitterly. Hero, Gomi said as if she had just been offended. That man is nothing but a miscreant that uses an asinine loophole to pretend to be a hero. I'm sure that anything he's done a real hero would have done better. He's helping people. I'm helping people, Toga shouted. Don't you dare act like you're doing this out of the kindness of your heart, Monona said, looking down at her with a disgusted expression. You just want to suck the blood of the criminals. You're nothing but an evil demon child. Toga froze. One day, I'm sure of it. All it will take is one bad day and you'll turn on that caped lunatic and show your true colors, Gomi said. Now get out of our house before what? All three of them looked behind the two abusive parents to find Izuku standing behind them. Batman, Gomi spat. Both of you have broken into our house. I'm calling the police. Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Izuku said in a threatening voice. You might want to check your messages. Gomi looked at Batman for a moment before taking out his phone and checking his messages. What? He shouted. Oh, our company's stock has dropped 25%. What? Monona shrieked as she went over to look at his phone. I am not someone you want to get on the bad side of, Izuku said, glaring at the now terrified Gomi. I despise you, both of you. Your daughter did everything she could to please you and you ask for more. Despicable. You'll find that your company is about to go through some tough times. And if you go to an orphanage, then expect to be turned away. The two were now trembling as they realized just how much influence Izuku had. If you ever speak of this, or do anything to hurt her in any way, then I will make sure you are both stripped of everything you have. Your money, your belongings, your house, and even your reputation. Izuku said. Is that clear? Why, yes, sir, they both said. Izuku stared at them both for a moment before moving towards the door. Come on, Himiko. Himiko followed him out the door, never looking back. Later in the Batmobile, Izuku and Toga sat in the Batmobile riding through the city going back to the manor. I'm not a good person, you know, Toga said in an uncharacteristically depressed tone. They were right. I'm only doing this for the blood. Izuku sighed. You and I know that's not true. I've seen you enjoy spending time with me and Melissa just as much as you do drinking blood. Yeah, but I'm still selfish, Toga said. You save people because you're a good person. Melissa too, but I just like hurting people. Izuku shook his head. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. There are plenty of people who like hurting others. You choose to do something productive with those urges. You save people when heroes who get paid to do it just sit back and watch, or worse, do the crimes themselves. I know you're tired of people telling you who you are, but I think you're a good person, Himiko. Batsy, Toga whispered before giving him a small smile. Thanks, Izuku smiled back. Frowning doesn't suit you, Himiko. I like seeing you smile. Toga's smile got bigger. Then I'll make sure to do it all the time. Izuku patted her on the head. Thank you. Also, Melissa is forcing us into another movie night. Apparently, it's called Dumbo. Oh, I love that one, Toga said. You've seen it. Mind telling me the plot? Izuku asked. But that would be spoiling the movie, Toga said. I like spoilers. It lets me be emotionally prepared for what's to come. Izuku said. I can't search them up online because Melissa blocked my internet access. So could you please tell me the plot? Nope, Toga teased. You're just gonna have to watch it blind. Izuku sighed. I figured as much. Later during movie night, Melissa, Izuku, and Toga were all gathered in the home theater ready to watch the movie. Wait a minute, Toga suddenly shouted. We forgot something. What? Melissa asked. Oh, JEVS, Toga hollered. Despite my age, my hearing works just fine, Lady Toga, Alfred said, walking into the room. Now what is it you want? Come watch the movie with us, she said, pointing to a seat next to Melissa. Oh, that's a great idea. Alfred, come sit down, Melissa said. I assume I have little choice in the matter, Alfred said. Nope, now sit down, Melissa said. Alfred sighed and did as he was ordered. All right, but please don't ask me to eat any popcorn. But that's part of the experience, Toga protested. After the movie, Toga yawned as she finished getting ready for bed. Usually, this is when she was supposed to patrol, but Izuku gave her the night off as well. Knock knock. Come in, Toga said. Izuku walked in wearing his nightclothes, which up until now had gone unused. Melissa's forcing you to sleep tonight, huh? Toga snickered. Yes, she is. Izuku sighed. You two are like a married couple. I'm jealous, Toga said with mock envy. That's not the case, Izuku said quickly. She does a lot for me, so refusing her feels wrong. Besides, now that my mother's killer is in jail, I might just get the best sleep I've ever had. Toga frowned and sat down on the bed. Hey, Batsy, what were your parents like? I've heard a little about your mom but nothing about your dad. Izuku paused. He walked over to Toga's bed and sat down next to her. Mom was ... my hero, Izuku said. She was my only light in a life full of darkness. She was always overcautious of me, treating me like I was the most precious thing in the world. Izuku looked down sadly. She never supported my dream of becoming a hero. I like to think that even if I had a quirk, she wouldn't have supported it. That she didn't want me to become one because it was too dangerous with a quirk or not. I doubt that's the case, but it's what I like to think. Izuku paused, his expression going over to confused. My dad is a strange case, he said. I don't love him. I don't even really like him. But at the same time, I don't hate him either. I used to just think of him as the man who hurt my mother. But without him, I wouldn't have been able to avenge Mom, to save people. He even left me money in his will when he didn't have to. He didn't care much for me. But I think somewhere deep down he at least wanted me to succeed. Toga responded. So one of us has bad parents and the other one has good parents who died. Life sucks. Izuku laughed. It does suck. But on the bright side, these tragedies are the reason we met. So at least I can be thankful for that. Toga smiled and wrapped her arms around him. Me too. Much to her surprise, Izuku returned the hug, making her blush like crazy. You hug me a lot, but I haven't hugged you back once, Izuku noted. I'm sorry about that. I'm still not used to ... this. Neither am I, Toga said before squeezing his tighter. But I like it. Izuku smiled. Me too. So what are we doing today, Bats? Toga asked from the back seat of the Batwing. We're stopping a weapons deal, Izuku said. Try not to harm the weapons, they can be used as evidence. Toga said. After arriving at the warehouse, Izuku and Toga snuck in through the windows. Below them were 3 guys next to a van, holding guns, talking to 5 dudes next to another van, while one guy was taking boxes out of the van and into the other one. Izuku looked at Toga and mouthed something. Toga nodded and threw a smoke bomb down. Hey, what the? Oof. Biwa. The sounds of gunfire and grunts of pain could be heard from the smoke for a while before everything went quiet. When the smoke cleared, Toga was pinning one of the guys to the ground while all the other guys were knocked out and tied up. The Batman and Red Hood, the goon shouted, trying to get out of Toga's grip. That's right, Toga said. It's us, the dynamic duo, here to ruin your day. Tell us where these guns were going, Izuku demanded. There's an assassination going on today, the goon said. We were gonna give some extra guns to the assassins. Who's the target and when is it happening? Izuku asked. Mirio Tagata, the goon said. It's happening today. We need to go, Izuku said. Hood, knock him out. Night, Toga said before kicking him in the head. Oracle, call Mirio, Izuku said. We need to warn him as soon as possible. I tried the minute he said his name, but he's not picking him up, Melissa said. Damn it, Izuku said. Hood, get in the Batwing now. Later at a coffee shop. It's so nice out today, Nejire said, drinking her coffee. Tamaki said nothing as he tried not to get noticed. Yeah, it's great, Mirio said. Well, it's not going to stay that way. Mirio and Tamaki gasped, turning around to see Izuku and Toga. Oh, it's Batman and Red Hood, Nejire said, seemingly unfazed. Mirio, someone put a hit on you, Izuku explained quickly. We need to get you out of here. Wait, slow down, Mirio said, a serious expression crossing his face. Who? Sniper detected, Melissa shouted. Get down, Izuku said, throwing Mirio to the ground just in the nick of time as a sniper bullet went past his head. Everyone in the surrounding area screamed and ran away as fast as they could. Tamaki and Nejire get up and look at where the bullet came from and saw a man with a visor and an American flag cap. Oracle, who is that? Izuku asked. Melissa used her Robins to scan him and give her information. He's called Gunhawk, a hired gun, Melissa said. Well, if it's just him, this shouldn't be so hard, Mirio said, getting ready to fight. DLAM, suddenly a bullet went through Gunhawk's head, killing instantly. Oracle, how many assassins are in the area? Izuku asked. There was a pause as Oracle's Robins scanned the area. 13, Melissa said. They are all well-known assassins. Deathstroke, Deadshot, Onomatopoeia, Black Spider, KG Beast, Cheshire, Sportsmaster, Feedback, Flamingo, Merlin, Styletta, Silver Monkey, and Lady Vic. There are 13 assassins, Izuku repeated to the 3 of them. You just had to say it wouldn't be that hard. Toga scowled. Sorry, Mirio said. And then everything descended into chaos. A large man with a large gun on his hand, aka KG Beast, suddenly burst through the now empty coffee shop and aimed his gun arm at them. Nejire used her shockwaves to neutralize the attack and KG Beast ran right at her. Tamaki makes a tentacle out of his arm and is about to help her when suddenly he heard a blam and it was ripped. Gah, Tamaki said as he looked behind him to the sound of the noise. The source was a man in a black leotard and trench coat with 2 rings on his face. Aka onomatopoeia. His quirk was called onomatopoeia. Any sound he makes will turn into an action. If he makes a gun sound, whatever he looks at will be shot by an invisible gun and bullet. Boom, he said. Suddenly the ground they were all under exploded, scattering Izuku, Toga, and Mirio across the battlefield. Nejire continued to fight KG Beast as he slowly tried to walk through her shockwaves. Tamaki recovered from the explosion and regrew his tentacle before sending it onomatopoeia. Who dodged? Meanwhile, Mirio groaned after landing on the ground. He got up quickly as he saw 2 more assassins, Silver Monkey and Styletter, run at him, one with a sword and one with a dagger. Mirio phases into the ground, before quickly popping up to strike the villains, only to find that they both were cut in half. Mirio was shocked, so shocked he almost didn't phase through the sword that was going to cut him in half. Turning around, he saw the culprit. It was a tall man in armor with a black and orange mask. Deathstroke, the world's #1 assassin. Man, you assassins really love killing each other, Mirio said. Only one man gets the money, Deathstroke explained. The man who kills you. Or in other words, me. Suddenly Deathstroke swung his sword in the air, cutting a bullet that was aimed at his head in half. Upon the highest building was Deadshot, the #2 assassin. Sorry, Deathstroke, but the bounty's mine, he said as he took aim and shoot another bullet. Deathstroke sliced it in half and ducked a punch from Mirio. Meanwhile, Izuku was fighting a man in a pink suit and mask known as Flamingo. He dodged a few swipes from his whip and threw a batarang at him, which he dodged before pulling out his gun and shooting at him. Izuku's suit took the bullets and Izuku charged at him and knocked the gun out of his hand. Flamingo was about to attack back when suddenly his back was slashed by a knife. Gah, he shouted as he fell and slipped into unconsciousness. Toga stood behind him, knife in hand. Your outfit sucks. Thank you, Hood, Izuku said. Look out. Toga couldn't finish what she was saying before she was suddenly tackled by a woman in a cat mask into a building. Hood, Izuku said. Before he could try and help her, he had to dodge a soccer ball. The soccer ball hit the ground behind him, exploding, causing Izuku to go flying back. As Izuku flew, he was suddenly hit hard by a baseball bat into a building. Izuku groaned as he slowly recovered, clutching his back. So you're the Batman? Coming up to him was a man in a hockey mask, Aka Sportsmaster. I expected you to be tougher, he said, taking a hockey puck out of one of his pouches. Izuku quickly got it. Sportsmaster took out a hockey stick and slammed the puck at Izuku. Izuku rolled out of the way of the puck, which exploded behind him. He ran as more explosive pucks were launched at him. Izuku took out one of his explosive batarangs, and as Sportsmaster was about to launch another puck, or threw at the puck, causing a large explosion. Wah! Sportsmaster yelled as the explosion launched him through a brick wall. Izuku capitalized and threw a pellet at him, trapping him in foam. Izuku takes a breath and was about to help Toga when suddenly his head felt like it was split open. Izuku yelled as he clutched his head in pain. Behind him was an assassin in a black coat. His name was Feedback. His quirk was Feedback. It allowed him to send radio waves into a person's brain that causes them immense amounts of pain. Meanwhile, Tamaki was using a clamshell shield to block Onomatopoeia's attacks. Blam, 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 Onomatopoeia said as his invisible bullets hit Tamaki's shield. Tamaki changed the fingers on his other hand into tentacles and launched them at Onomatopoeia. Boom, Onomatopoeia said, looking at the tentacles. The space around the tentacle exploded, but from the smoke, the tentacle emerged unharmed due to the fact that Tamaki had reinforced them with crab shells. The tentacles grabbed the surprised Onomatopoeia and smacked him into a building, knocking him out. Tamaki recalled his tentacles and looked around for Mirio. Instead, he saw Batman on his knees clutching his head in pain with Feedback standing there. Tamaki aimed his hand and Feedback and spider silk came out of his palms. The silk ensnared Feedback and Tamaki pulled Feedback towards him before bashing him in the head with his clamshell hand, knocking him out. He ran over to Izuku. Are you okay? I'm fine. Izuku groaned before shaking his head. You go help Nejire. I'll get Hood. Tamaki nodded. Meanwhile, Toga was engaged in a blade fight with the cat-masked girl Aka Cheshire. Cheshire jabbed at her with her size and Toga deflected it with her knife. You're not bad for an amateur, Cheshire said. And you're not bad for a furry, Toga responded. Their blades clashed and the two fought for dominance. Suddenly Cheshire threw her sai into the air, causing Toga's knife to go flying too. Cheshire sent out a kick, revealing a hidden blade in her shoe, cutting Toga's cheek. No fair, Toga said, taking out her other knife. Suddenly she felt really woozy. Oh, Toga groaned as the room started to spin. Cheshire walked up to her, easily dodging a sloppy attack from Toga before grabbing her forehead. Toga backed up as she felt 10 times worse than before. She started sweating heavily and her breath started to increase in pace. Can't handle a little poison, dear? Cheshire asked. Cheshire, quirk, poison touch. Allows her to poison anything she touches. She also coats her blades in poison as well. She was about to attack again when suddenly Izuku came in, kicking her in the face. Hood, Izuku said, running over to the ill toga. Cheshire got up. Not gonna do much to him in that armor. Well, you can either fight me or save her, Cheshire said. Pick one. Izuku glared at her before going into his belt to find an antitoxin. Cheshire took this opportunity to flee the building, getting away from the two. Izuku took out a needle from his belt and jammed it into Toga's arm. Oh, Toga said tiredly. Everything hurts. It's okay, Izuku said. Just rest in awe. Izuku screamed as an arrow was launched into his arm, hitting him between the plates in his armor. Oracle, where did that come from? Izuku asked. That Merlin guy is on the rooftop opposite to you, Melissa said. Can't even catch my breath, Izuku said as he held an unconscious Toga in his arms. Meanwhile, Tamaki and Nejire finally took down KG Beast after hitting him with what felt like a million attacks. We need to get Mirio, Nejire said. Yes, but look out, Tamaki said, stepping in front of her and blocking an incoming bullet. Deadshot was far away from the two, aiming his gun at them. Sorry kids, but those two are freaks of nature, Deadshot said, referring to Mirio and Deathstroke. So I'm just gonna have to wait until they wear each other. And I'll kill time by killing you. Meanwhile, Mirio and Deathstroke were at a standstill. Neither of the two could land a direct hit. Deathstroke swiped at him with his sword and Mirio phased through it. Mirio tried to counterattack, aiming at one of the openings in Deathstroke's armor, but he saw Deathstroke quickly aimed his pistol at his hand, forcing him to make it intangible. The bullet went through his hand and his hand went through his arm. Mirio sunk into the ground and tried to reappear a few feet away from Deathstroke, but he was already on him again. This guy is relentless, Mirio thought. The two were in a standstill until suddenly a blonde lady in a mask, aka Lady Vic, tried to attack Deathstroke from behind. Deathstroke turned around, blocked her sword with his own and shot her a few times in the chest, nearly killing her. Lady Vic was on the ground and Deathstroke aimed his gun at her head. Suddenly Mirio popped out of the ground and let his arm take the bullet. Ah, Mirio said as he clutched his wounded arm. I knew you would do that, Deathstroke said. You hero types are always so predictable. Deathstroke slashes his sword at him and Mirio tires to use his quirk. But he can't. Gah, he shouts as a gash is made in his chest. What? Why can't I use my quirk? Don't worry, the effect is temporary, Deathstroke says. Then again, you won't live long enough for it to wear off. Deathstroke comes at him with his sword. It's suddenly stopped by a bunch of ropes. They both look to the side to see a man in a black stealth suit with a spider on his head. A black spider. That's my target, Black Spider said. Deathstroke just looked at him, dropped his sword and pulled out his staff. Meanwhile, Tamaki and Nejire were flying through the air, heading towards Deadshot. Nejire was flying them while Tamaki used his clamshell shield to block the bullets, with his other hand having tentacles replacing his fingers. Deadshot shoots off to the side, making the bullet bounce off of a nearby flagpole and head towards Nejire's head. Tamaki simply tilted her head, making the bullet miss its target. How the hell did he see that? Deadshot asked. He took a closer look and saw something strange on the tentacles. Eyeballs. There were eyeballs where the suction cups should be. Well, shit, Deadshot said as Nejire finally got in range and shot out a shockwave at him. Deadshot was blown back before his head hit a brick wall, knocking him out. Got him, Nejire said. Let's go find Mirio, Tamaki said. Yeah, but we should probably take care of that archer guy, Nejire said, looking at Merlin. Let's do it fast, Tamaki said. Merlin saw Nejire and Tamaki flying towards him. I am not dealing with Batman. And those two, he thought. Hey, he's running away, Nejire said, looking at the now fleeing Merlin. Should we go after him? No, we can't waste time, Tamaki said. If he isn't trying to kill us, then we need to focus on the other assassins. Meanwhile, Black Spider was heavily wounded and on the floor in front of Deathstroke. Deathstroke is about to shoot him when Mirio steps in and tries to take the gun away from him, only to get elbowed in the face. Even when powerless, you still try to protect others, Deathstroke said, pointing the gun at Mirio. How heroic. I know, isn't he great? In an instant, Deathstroke is surrounded by Tamaki, Nejire, and Izuku. I'm not sure I can take all three of them at once, he thought to himself. And I have no idea when that boy will get his quirk back. It looks like I have to retreat. Deathstroke throws down a flash grenade, making everyone look away. When the light dissipated, Deathstroke was gone. Hey, he can do that trick too, said an exhausted Mirio as he fell down from exhaustion. You think you can track him, Bats? No, Izuku said. Whatever that was neutralized my tech. None of my systems are functioning properly. Probably some sort of EMP, flash bomb. Mirio, Tamaki shouted as he looked at his friend's wound. Izuku walked up to him and pulled some first aid equipment out of his belt. Nejire, I need you to get Hood. She's passed out in one of the buildings below. Nejire nodded and went to collect her. So, Mirio said, anybody know who wanted me dead? You're still watching that, Melissa said, walking into the cave, seeing Izuku watch Deathstroke and Mirio's fight. Yeah, Batsy, don't you think you should hit the hay? Toga asked, walked in beside her. His movements, Izuku said. The way he fights. It's Slade. Who? Toga asked. Slade, Izuku said. Back during my training days, I got a large amount of my combat training from the League of Assassins, an army of ninjas trained and led by Ra's al Ghul. His name is really fancy, so he must be important, Toga deduced. Well, you're not wrong, Izuku said. Ra's is hundreds, maybe even thousands of years old. Wait, how? Melissa asked. He would be older than Quirks at that point. Lazarus Pit, Izuku answered. It's basically a fountain of youth that can restore a person to their prime, heal fatal wounds, and possibly bring back the dead. Using it, Ra's has stayed alive for much longer than anyone should have, and with the League, he has been responsible for many things throughout history. He's even claimed to be responsible for bringing about Quirks. That's insane, Melissa said. There is just a pit out there can do those kinds of things. Pits, Izuku corrected. There are multiple Lazarus pits all over the world, although Ra's has found most if not all of them and his guards stationed all around them. Well, if you kick the bucket, we know what to do, Batsy, Toga said. I'd rather you not, Izuku said seriously. The pits have a tendency to drive whoever goes in insane. Looking at Ra's, I would rather stay dead. Let's talk about something else, Melissa said. What does this have to do with Deathstroke? Deathstroke, or rather, Slade Wilson, also trained with the League. Me and him were rivals in a way. Everyone else was nowhere near our level except for Ra's, so we often fought each other, Izuku explained. That being said, I never really beat him. Not when he was using his quirk. What's his quirk? Melissa asked. It's called Enhance, Izuku said. It allows him to enhance any part of his body. He can enhance his muscles to make himself stronger. He can enhance his natural healing ability to heal wounds faster. He can even enhance his brain. The only drawback is that he needs to concentrate on using it. As you can imagine, it's hard to focus on that while you're fighting. However, thanks to Ra's training and his own natural talents, he can enhance every part of his body while fighting waves of people without breaking a sweat. So basically, he's really, really dangerous, Toga summed up. Yes, Izuku said. Even now, I doubt I could beat him one-on-one without planning. And he might be just as good a strategist as I am. So how do we take him down? Melissa, for now, we don't, Izuku said. I looked through the underground and found that the bounty on Mirio's head has been retracted, most likely as a result of the failed assassination attempt. Finding Slade won't be possible, so I guess I'll just have to keep an eye on bounties in the underground, Melissa said. Izuku got up. I'm going to go look around to see if any of the assassins that escaped are lurking around. I'll go with you, Toga said. No, Izuku said. You sleep. This isn't important enough for you to have to come. But what if that Deathstroke guy is around? Toga asked. Unless I have a significant bounty on my head, Slade won't come, Izuku said. He was never one for wasting time. Izuku pulled the cowl over his head. And the other assassins shouldn't be anything to worry about. You should rest, Himiko. You and your friends are going to hang out tomorrow after school, correct? Yeah, Toga said. They're gonna introduce me to some more friends. I can't wait. I'm sure nothing bad could possibly happen tomorrow. Tomorrow, Class 1 was on the bus heading to the USJ. And the bus was filled with chatter. Momo, Helena, I'm so jealous of you too, Toru said. You're rich, cool, strong, pretty, and you have a cool family. Momo blushed and Helena just smirked. She, like everyone else, was wearing her costume and had her crossbows with her. Yeah, we are pretty great, she said with pride. But our family ain't that cool. Mom and Dad are ... Well, the less said about them the better. And Harvey is a pussy. Helena, Momo said in a scolding tone. That is no way to speak about your brother or a pro hero, Ada said. Hey, Eda, can you do me a favor? Helena asked. Stand up, pull the stick out of your ass and mind your damn business. So your dad named Helena and your mom named Momo. How did they decide who would name your brother? Gyro asked. Helena chuckled. They flipped a coin. At the USJ, the students walked into the building, in awe at the size and design of the place. 13. Achako cheered after spotting her favorite hero. Wasn't All Might supposed to be here? Helena asked. All Might can't be here today for personal reasons, 13 said while signaling Eraserhead that All Might had run out of time. Man, this place is awesome, Kaminari said. There's a boat and a fountain and an evil-looking black void. Wait, what? Eraserhead said before turning around seeing what Kaminari was talking about. The black void from the fountain started getting bigger and bigger, and then a man with hands all over him walked out, and then a giant bird man, and lastly, King Shark. Eraserhead stood in front of his students. 13. Get them away from here. You can't seriously try and fight that thing, Helena said. We can't argue with them, let's just go, Momo said, grabbing her sister and running with the rest of the students. The students ran toward the exit, but suddenly that black void showed up in front of them. Greetings, I am Kurogiri and we are the League of Villains. I'm afraid that you all must meet an untimely demise at the hands of my comrades, Kurogiri said. Kurogiri sent his mist at them, enveloping some of them, but others managed to dodge the attack. The mountain zone. Todoroki landed and was on high alert. It seems like they separated me from everyone else, he thought, not realizing that Toru was also nearby. He looked around and found that he seemed to be alone. He said something about comrades. I should stay alert, Todoroki thought. Suddenly a shadow went over him. Todoroki looked up to see a man in a green suit who was seemingly attached to a kite. The man landed on the top of one of the mountains and the two looked at each other. There was a pause before Todoroki spoke. Is this a ... joke? Who are you? Kite Man said. Hell yeah. Todoroki then immediately froze him. The flood zone. Shinso fell into the water with a splash. After letting himself float to the surface, he heard something. He turned to see a man in what looked to be a tiger-themed wetsuit with jet skis, coming at him, aiming his gun at his head. Just as Shinso was about to be shot, Tsuyu's tongue wrapped around him and pulled him onto the boat. Thanks, Shinso said. You're welcome, Ribbit, Tsuyu said. Oh god, he's coming right at us. Mainta, who was also on the boat, shouted. Shinso looked and saw that the villain was charging right at them. Who are you? Shinso asked the villain. Haha, I am Tiger Shark, the one who will bring about your end. And before Tiger Shark could finish, Shinso's quirk took hold, causing his body to go limp. This didn't stop his jet skis though. Thunk, Tiger Shark crashed against the side of the boat head first, knocking him out and leaving his unconscious body to float in the water. Well, that was easy, Shinso said. Sue, bring him up and Mainta use your balls to stick him to the side of the boat. The rainfall zone. Takoyami and Sato appeared in the rainfall zone. Where are we? Sato said. That villain likely separated us from the class so someone else could kill us, Takoyami said. Well, where do you think? Sato couldn't finish what he was saying as they suddenly heard something very loud stomping towards them. What looked like a female version of Gang Orca was charging towards them. Isn't that Gang Orca's sister? Sato asked as she charged towards them. The villain. This will not be easy, Takoyami says. The ruin zone. Momo, Gyro and Kaminari appeared in the ruin zone, much to their confusion. What happened? Kaminari asked. Suddenly they heard a laugh coming from the ruined buildings. Welcome, heroes, to your demise. Suddenly a man that looked like some kind of abandoned stitched-up doll slithered over in front of Gyro at startling speed. I am Ragdoll. Now die, he said before punching Gyro in the stomach. Gah! Gyro cried in pain. Gyro, Momo said. She made a staff with her quirks and attempted to hit Ragdoll, but he dodged. Each time she tried to hit him, he would contort his body in ways that should not be humanly possible, making it impossible to hit him. Ragdoll swept Momo's legs, making her fall. Kaminari tried to punch the guy, but all he hit was air before Ragdoll counterattacked, backhanding him. Gyro got up, clutching her stomach. This guy's not as much of a joke as he looks. Conflagration zone. When Kirishima and Helena appeared in the conflagration zone and naturally were a little freaked out. What the hell? Kirishima said, looking at the burning buildings. Everything is one fire. Suddenly Helena heard something. Watch out, she shouted as she tackled Kirishima, getting him out of the way of the fireball that was coming at him. Thanks, Kirishima said. Thank me later, Helena said, getting up and pulling out her crossbows. Let's deal with him first. Kirishima looked at who Helena was referring to. It was a skeleton man. Not a man who was a skeleton. A man whose body was mostly see-through except for his skeleton. I think I've heard of this guy, Kirishima said. He's called Dr. Phosphorus. Apparently, he's a big deal in smaller villain circles. Helena shoots an arrow at him and Dr. Phosphorus, but he just shot out a fireball that destroyed it. Less exposition and more fighting, Helena said. The landslide zone. Ajiro was the only one to appear in the landslide zone, much to his chagrin. Only one. Puh, what a farce. Ajiro turned around and saw a man in a green suit and cape with what looked like some kind of goggle monocle. They send me only a single child to kill. Me, Count Vertigo. The man scoffed. Fine, come, child. Come and meet your end. Ajiro took up a fighting stance. Meanwhile in the Batcave, Izuku and Toga ran to the Batcomputer where Melissa had called them. What's the emergency? Izuku asked. UA is under attack, Melissa said. I noticed that security was out in the USJ area, and I sent one of the Robins there. Villains are attacking the teachers and the students, and something is blocking communications around the school. I can't get in contact with anyone from UA. Me and Himiko will handle the attack, Izuku said. Our systems are better than UA's, so our communications will be fine. Try to use the Robins to get in touch with UA. Physically, right, Melissa said. I'm calling the Batwing now. Back at the USJ, the Racerhead flew across the floor and into the fountain as King Shark smacked him around. Poor Aizawa had multiple wounds, some of which were bleeding quite badly. He had no real way to beat something like King Shark. His quirk wouldn't work on him and his physical abilities were so far above Aizawa that he couldn't even hurt him. But still, he had to keep their attention on him. He could only hope that his students could find a way out and call for help. He got up and ran back at King Shark. King Shark slashed at him, but a Racerhead jumped over his fist and wrapped it in his capture tool. After landing, Eraserhead pulled on the capture tool, causing King Shark to punch himself in the face. This dazed him for about 2 seconds before King Shark bit the capture tool, snapping it like it was nothing. King Shark charged at Eraserhead at a speed he could only barely react to, jumping out of the way, avoiding certain doom at the jaws of his foe. Impressive, Eraserhead, Tamura said on the side. Most people don't last this long. I wonder though, how much longer until you're nothing but fish food. King Shark charged at him again. Crash. Everyone stopped and looked above them to see Izuku gliding down with his cape. Izuku immediately threw an pellet at King Shark, hitting him right on the nose. Row. King Shark roared as the pellet unleashed some kind of fog in his face. He waved his arms around as if he was trying to attack the fog, each swipe getting sloppy and more tired until he fell on his face. Knocked out, Tamura was befuddled. How did you? An improved version of the shark repellent I used against him, combined with sleeping gas, Izuku explained. I suppose I should have expected this from the Batman, Tamura said while scratching his neck. On the bright side, I can finally kill you for getting in the way of assassins. So you're the one who put the bounty out for Mirio, Izuku said. And it looks like you're the one responsible for these monsters too. They're called Namu, Tamura explained. I call them disturbing, Izuku said. Would you happen to be the one behind Venom as well? It would make my job a lot easier. Who? Tamura asked, being completely clueless about the drug. Never mind, Izuku sighed. Either way, you're going down. Tamura laughed. I don't think so. Namu, kill him. Bam. Izuku was sent flying, as the Namu hit him at speeds he couldn't even comprehend. Duh. Izuku groaned as he fell to the ground. Okay, several of my ribs are broken, and it moves faster than I can react. Wait, is my armor cracked? That means this thing's strength is around All Might's level. In that case, I can't let it see me, Izuku thought. As the Namu was about to attack, Izuku threw several smoke pellets in every direction, raising her evasion. Tamura asked, what a cheap mini-boss you are. The Namu became confused, unable to find its target. It could just use its strength to clap away the smoke, but it was not smart enough to do so. Izuku went up to Eraserhead, who he found through the smoke thanks to his detective vision. Get out of here. Help the students. Izuku whispered. I can't leave you here with that thing, Eraserhead whispered. My armor can take a few more hits before it breaks. If that thing punches you once, you'll be splattered all over the floor. Izuku explained. I sent Red Hood to help some of the students, but she might not be able to get to all of them. I know you dislike actually doing your job rather than just expelling all your students, but I'm sure that even you don't want them to die. Eraserhead raised an eyebrow at what was clearly an insult to his teaching method but decided to ignore it. Izuku was right and he really couldn't do anything against a foe like this. Fine, you better not die here, Eraserhead said. I don't plan to, Izuku said. With that, Eraserhead ran off, leaving him with the Namu, who was looking around trying to find him. These things are no longer people, just puppets, Izuku reminded himself. Oh, for fuck's sake, clap the fog away, Tamura ordered. The Namu did as it was ordered and clapped his hand, forcing the smoke to disperse, but it still could not see Izuku. Behind you, Tamura warned. Moving quickly, Izuku climbed the monster's back and stuck a batarang in its exposed brain. Boom! The batarang exploded, spattering the Namu's brain and flinging Izuku off his back. The Namu fell to the ground, seemingly dead. Izuku breathed deeply, grateful that the beast hadn't punctured his lungs. Tamura just chuckled. Impressive, Batman. Very, very impressive. It's a good thing you're going to die here, otherwise, you might have been a threat. Suddenly, Kurogiri appeared. I am sorry, but one of the students has escaped. That's fine. He will get All Might for us, Tamura said. In the meantime, let's see what Batman thinks of Namu's region. Izuku was about to ask what he meant when he heard the Namu get up. Before he could react, the Namu grabbed Izuku and started trying to crush him in between its huge arms and body. Izuku looked on in horror as the Namu's brain grew back. It can regenerate. Izuku groaned as his armor started cracking more and more. Batman, what's happening? The armor is breaking, Melissa said over the comms. I will explain later. Just do something. Anything, Izuku shouted. There was a pause as blood was starting to come out of Izuku's mouth. Activating mouth guard, Melissa said, activating Izuku's mouth guard. Your armor should have just enough strength left to protect you from this. Brace yourself. Crash. Suddenly the Batwing crashed through the roof and crashed into the Namu and Batman. Kaboom. Kurogiri shielded Tamura from the blast at the last minute. After the explosion died down, all that could be seen as a bunch of flaming wreckage. Izuku pulled himself out, his armor having taken most of the blast, but the impact still breaking a few more bones. Oracle, Izuku said, testing if his cowl's comms had been damaged. Still here, Melissa said, although her voice was a bit muffled and filled with static. We need to think of a plan before that thing. Izuku stopped when he heard the sound of screeching metal. Izuku looked back at the wreckage and saw a large, black hand rise up. Quickly the Namu rose up, all its wounds healed and his eyes on Izuku. Before it could act though, the doors to the USJ opened. and All Might stepped in. All Might walked through the door of the building, his feet cracking the floor he walked on. And most importantly, he was not smiling. Faster than Izuku could blink, he was moved out of the way of the Namu. "Ew, how dare you hurt my students," All Might said, looking at Tamura. "All Might, about time. You'd think heroes would arrive on time." Tamura said, "Namu, kill All Might." The Namu switched targets and charged at All Might. All Might responded with a punch straight to the Namu's chest, which did absolutely nothing. Tamura laughed. "Shock absorption, one of Namu's other quirks. None of your attacks will have an effect. Don't you see? You can't beat this Namu. It was designed specifically to kill you. It is the anti-symbol of peace." "Okay, Izuku. All Might is fighting something he might not be able to beat. What can I do?" Izuku asked himself. Meanwhile, in the conflagration zone, Helena and Kirishima were hiding behind rubble, trying not to get noticed by the villain that was hunting them down. "He's not looking. Run," Helena whispered. The two ran to another piece of rubble, farther away from the villain. "Man, your quirk is great for this," Kirishima said. Helena Yaoyorozu. Quirk, Hunter's Sense. It gives her greatly enhanced senses, sharply improving her eyesight, hearing, and taste. "Keep it down," Helena said. Helena had her eyes on the villain, moving around blasting whatever was in his way. "This guy's reaction time is too good. If I shoot an arrow he'll hear it and shoot one of his fireballs." She pondered. "I need something to distract him." Whoosh. Suddenly, Dr. Phosphorus was hit with a large jet of water. What the? Out of nowhere, Mizu of the water hose duo appeared and dosed Dr. Phosphorus. Or rather, Toga, using Mizu's appearance and quirk. Toga hit him with another blast of water, but this time Dr. Phosphorus fought back, unleashing a torrent of flames at the jet. The two elements clashed. Toga and Dr. Phosphorus were locked in a power struggle, and it was anyone's game. "GH," Dr. Phosphorus groaned. Or rather, it would be anyone's game if it weren't for the fact that this was a 3 versus 1. Huntress unleashed a volley of arrows into the villain's back, not only causing him back wounds but also making him lose concentration. Toga took advantage of this, and her water blasted through Dr. Phosphorus's fire. Phosphorus went flying back into one of the flaming buildings, knocking him out. "Yes," Toga cheered before looking at Helena. "Nice one." "Thanks," Helena said, running up to Toga. "But what are you doing here? Did the others manage to call the heroes?" Yeah. Toga lied. Helena raised an eyebrow. Thanks to her quirk, it was really easy to figure out when people were lying. Whether it be the tells on their faces, the hesitation in their voice, or the increase in their heartbeats. Not that she needed her quirk to tell that Toga was lying. Helena aimed her crossbows at her. "Don't take this personally, but a pro appearing where they shouldn't and then lying is really suspicious, especially when there are villains around." Well, Kirishima said, quickly getting in front of her. "You can't just aim your weapons at pro heroes." "She might not be a pro," Helena said. "She could be a villain pretending to be a pro." Then she hears something. "Melting." "Oh no," Toga said as her disguise started to melt off. "What the?" Kirishima said, quickly taking a step back. Helena kept her crossbow trained on the now pile of goo that was Mizu. Wait, don't shoot," Toga said, emerging from the goo. "Wait, is that Red Hood?" Kirishima asked. "Yup," Toga said. "Me and Batsy figured out that UA was under attack and came to help." Helena was still suspicious. "And how did you figure out UA was under attack?" "Sorry, that's a secret," Toga said, putting her finger over her mouth, a gesture that seemed all too familiar to Helena. "Wait a minute." Her voice, her looks, her quirk. It's Toga, Helena realized. "Batman's a detective, so he probably just used his detective skills," Kirishima said. "Anyway, I have to go help some more people. Please don't tell anyone I used my quirk." "'Kay," Toga said. "Got it," Kirishima said, giving her a thumbs up. Helena looked at her strangely before smiling. "Of course." Then she mouthed, "Toga." Tonga's eyes widened. "Oh, right, I told her about my quirk." "Whoops, let's go," Helena said. Meanwhile, in the landslide zone, Ajiro was not having a good time, to say the least. Count Vertigo's quirk, Vertigo. It made it quite hard for him to attack when it felt like the room was spinning and he wanted to throw up. The constantly falling rocks did not help either. Ajiro tried to punch him again, but his aim was off, causing him to miss. The Count took advantage of this and kneed him in the stomach. Ajiro stumbled back. The blow, combined with the nausea he was already feeling, made him actually throw up. Count Vertigo stood over Ajiro. "Your time is over, child." Count Vertigo raised his arm, only for it to be ensnared by a capture tool. "What?" Count Vertigo said. Suddenly the vertigo Ajiro was feeling was gone. "No, your time is over," said Eraserhead. "Ajiro, now." Ajiro jumped up and bashed Count Vertigo in the head with his tail. Count Vertigo hit the rocks, unconscious. "Thank you, Aizawa-sensei," Ajiro said. "Get to the others. The exit is unguarded and there shouldn't be anyone in your way," Eraserhead said. "Right," Ajiro said. Meanwhile, in the ruin zone, "Gah." Momo shouted as she was thrown to the floor. Gyro and Kaminari were rather beat, while Ragdoll didn't have a scratch on him. You guys are way too slow, Ragdoll said, showing off his flexibility. Well, you want to know what isn't slow? Sound, Gyro said, as she plugged her earphone jacks into her speakers and sent out a blast of sound. Ragdoll dodged the sound blast and slithered over to her, wrapping himself around her body. Bruh, Gyro shouted as Ragdoll started crushing her. Get off of her, Kaminari said, about to punch Ragdoll. Okay, Ragdoll said, getting off of Gyro and wrapping himself around Kaminari said. Gah, bad move, Kaminari said with a smirk. Human stun gun. Activating his quirk, Kaminari's body was covered in electricity, electrocuting Ragdoll. AHHH. Ragdoll yelled as many volts ran through him. After a few seconds, Kaminari stopped. Ragdoll fell off of him, his smoking body hitting the ground with a thud. Way, Kaminari derped. Phew, Gyro said. Nice job, Buzz for brains. Way, Kaminari responded, making Gyro laugh a little. We got lucky, Momo said. If he hadn't wrapped around Kaminari, then we might not have been able to hit him. Well, your luck just ran out. The two looked behind them to see another villain, seemingly with an electricity quirk, holding Kaminari. You move, I kill him, the villain said. So, it's your lives or his. How about neither? The villain's quirk suddenly stopped working. What? The villain yelled before receiving a kick to the head. Aizawa-sensei, Momo said, running to her teacher. How did you defeat those villains? I didn't, Eraserhead said. Batman is dealing with them. Batman, how did he get here? Gyro asked. I don't know and I don't care, Eraserhead said. What I do know is that you need to go. The exit is unguarded. Right, Gyro, help me with Kaminari, Momo said, picking up her classmate. Meanwhile, in the rainfall zone, Sato was thrown into a building, as Orca's strength far outmatched his. Dark shadow wrapped around her, attempting to hold her but to no avail. Orca ran at Takoyami, ready to strike. Hey ugly, she stopped. Turning around, she saw Shinzo, who spoke some more. Yes, you. Tell me, did you become a villain because you wanted attention or because people wouldn't stop making fun of your weight? Shinzo asked. Orca growled. What did you say, you little? Suddenly her eyes grayed out and her body went limp, Shinzo's quirk having completely taken hold of her. Thank you, Shinzo, Takoyami said. No problem, Shinzo said. Now how do we take her down? Leave that one to me, Sato said, cracking his knuckles. That's not going to be enough, Shinzo said before turning to Orca. When I say now, attack her. I will help, Takoyami said. Shinzo nodded, and Sato stepped up to Orca before gulping down some more sugar. Now, punch yourself in the face, Shinzo commanded. Orca did as she was told, and right as Sato and Dark Shadow hit her, she punched herself. Orca was sent flying back, crashing into the fake buildings. That should do it, Shinzo said. You guys should probably leave. I'll go look around for anyone who may still be fighting. I'll go with you, Sato said. No, Takoyami ordered. Your quirk is going to start tiring you out soon. You should leave while you still can. I will go with Shinzo. Sato wanted to argue, but he knew Takoyami was right. Fine, Sato said. But if I see any villains along the way, I'm punching him. Back with Izuku. All Might and the Nama were going at it, but it was clear that All Might was losing. I need to do something, but what? Izuku thought. He looked over at Tamura and Kirigiri, and then he got an idea. Hey, Izuku said, getting both of their attention. He then threw a batarang off to the side of Kirigiri. Your injuries must be affecting your aim, Batman, Kirigiri said. Allow me to AHHH. The batarang looped back, hitting Kirigiri in the back, before unleashing an electrical charge. After the batarang stopped, Kirigiri fell down, unconscious. TCH. Now I have to wait until he wakes up. I was going to leave after we killed you and All Might, but now I'm going to have to kill all the other pros that come in here, Tamura said. But first, I'll kill you myself. Tamura charged at him, thinking that with his injuries, he could take down Batman with ease. He was very, very wrong. Izuku dodged Tamura's attempted at a lunging grab, grabbed his wrist and slammed his elbow down on his arm, breaking it. AHHH. Tamura roared in pain before turning to Izuku with hate-filled eyes. I'll kill you. Tamura attempted to grab Izuku's head, but Izuku simply ducked, causing Tamura to stumble before Izuku rose his head up, hitting Tamura's chin hard and making the hand on his face fly off behind Izuku. Tamura stumbled back, and as he was getting ready to attack again, he noticed that his father's hand was missing. Father. He saw the hand behind Batman and lunged for it, but Izuku caught him, grabbing him with one arm around his neck and the other on his wrist, keeping him from grabbing him. He made sure that Tamura was facing away from where All Might and Izuku were fighting. I don't know what your quirk is, but considering your fighting style seems to be centered on grabbing me with all 5 of your fingers, I'm guessing it has something to do with that, Izuku said. And with that, Izuku promptly broke his wrist. Bruh, Tamura screamed enraged. Father, give me back, father. Why don't you call your little pet? He seems to be good at fighting your battles for you, Izuku said. And Tamura did just that. Namu, forget All Might. Kill Batman. Kill him now. The Namu turned his head, before swatting All Might aside and running towards Izuku. Izuku then turned around, putting Tamura right in the path of his own monster. Wait, no, Tamura shouted. Suddenly, just before the Namu could reach them, it stepped on several pellets Izuku had laid out earlier, causing a sticky foam to burst out and stop the Namu. That will hold him for about 5 seconds, Izuku explained quickly. I would suggest telling him to stop moving unless you want to be paced. Namu, stop. Don't move. Don't move a fucking inch, Tamura said in a panic. The Namu did as it was told and went completely still. Thank you, Izuku said. Before Tamura could respond, Izuku threw him to the ground and stomped on his head, knocking him out, and the Namu just stood there. All Might, Izuku said, getting the hero's attention. The fight is over. All Might looked at him confused, before looking at Namu and then back to him. Why isn't he moving? All Might asked. From what I gathered, these Namu have no will of their own, Izuku explained. This one, in particular, was only made to follow orders. Note how it didn't attack you until he ordered it to. He didn't defend the villain until he asked it to kill me. I see, All Might said. So you tricked him to making Namu stop moving, and then knocking him out so he couldn't give any more orders. Correct, Izuku confirmed. I already knew that this villain wasn't smart when he revealed he was the one who put out the bounty for Mirio. Because in the end, the reason Mirio was still alive was because the assassins were tripping over each other trying to kill him. If he had just sent Deathstroke and maybe a few others, then there is a good chance Mirio would be dead. All Might frowned. He had actually spent a good amount of time with Mirio, per Nezu's request. He was a good kid and the best candidate for One for All. Thank you for helping him, by the way, All Might said. Now let's get these villains rounded up. Izuku saw the steam coming off of All Might. The pros will be here soon. Tell Uncle Might to take a rest, Melissa said. You too, Izuku. Your time is up, Izuku warned him. You should get out of here before you revert to your skinny form. The other pros will be here soon. All Might's pupils widened. How do you know about that? We can talk about that later, Izuku said. For now, we both need to get patched up. The next day, the staff of UA sat together in a meeting room, ready to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the bat. What is Batman doing here? Midnight asked. Izuku was standing next to Nezu, recovery girl, having already healed all of his injuries. Batman saved the lives of me and the students, Eraserhead said point blank. If he was not there, they would have killed me and then hunted down the students. He is a very intelligent person and probably has more to say about this than we do. Can we skip the whole "we don't trust him" part? I can't overlook how he knew about the attack and knew about All Might's true form. Midnight said. Batman has access to more information than you may think, Nezu said ominously. He has used this information to benefit this city and its people. That is all we will speak about the matter. There was no room for argument in his tone, so the staff had no choice but to move on. Well, while we're talking about breaches and security, why did you not respond the second after the security went down? Izuku asked. We thought that the system was just malfunctioning, Power Loader said. We were going to fix it, but we had classes to teach. Teaching your classes is more important than the students' safety, Izuku said. If your security goes down even for a second, your main priority should be to get it back up immediately, and barring that, you should send pros to make sure that area is secure. Well, we didn't think that anyone would attack us considering our normally impressive security and massive staff of pros, Snipe said. What some people view as an obstacle, others view as a challenge, Izuku warned. And UA is far from impenetrable. It was only a matter of time until someone attacked, and you weren't prepared. Well, pride comes before the fall, Nezu said. We were quite arrogant and our students almost suffered for it. We will have to be more cautious in the future. I would also suggest upgrading your security, Izuku said. I would recommend Shield Tech. Oh, Melissa's company. That sounds like a great idea, All Might said. Anyway, the creature that attacked you was called a Namu, Izuku said. There are many different kinds of these things, but this one was much tougher than any of the ones I have encountered before. From what I can tell, they used to be people before their bodies and minds were altered, turning them into living weapons. Some of them even have multiple quirks. All Might looked down with a fearful expression on his face. It can't be. How is that even possible? 13 asked. I don't know. King Shark mentioned someone called the Doctor, Izuku said. Other than that, I have no idea what process they are using to do this, and as far as I can tell, there is no way to reverse it. So if we see any more, then we shouldn't worry about killing them, Snipe said. Unfortunately, that is what I would recommend, Izuku said. The students got out with no life-threatening or permanent injuries, Eraserhead said, and none of them seem to be mentally scarred either. Well, we can discuss improvements to our security at a later date, Nezu said. For now, this meeting is dismissed. All Might, Batman, I would like you two to stay, however. The two in question nodded while everyone else looked at them a little confused before leaving. After everyone else left, All Might went into his buff form, and then they waited for their next guest. Hey there, Mirio said, walking into the room. Hope I got here on time. Oh hey, Batman's here. I thought you would have left by now. Hello, young Mirio. All Might said. Please sit down. We need to have a long conversation. Mirio gave them a confused look before looking at Izuku and then sitting down. All Might deflated, exposing his true form to Mirio. What the? Miro said as his mouth dropped. This is All Might's true form, Izuku explained. All Might nodded. Many years ago I got into a fight with a powerful villain. He injured me almost to the point of death. The doctors were able to keep me alive, but it left me in this state. All Might can use his quirk to continue being the symbol of peace, but only for around 3 hours a day. Nezu continued. His time as the symbol of peace ... is running short. Mirio's eyes were wide. Wow, that's ... that's a lot to take in. I guess if All Might isn't going to be able to fight, then I'll have to step up my game. You're correct, but not in the way you're thinking, Izuku said. What do you mean? Mirio asked. Mirio, you have been chosen to inherit my quirk, All Might said. There was a pause before Mirio said. Many years ago, back when quirks first appeared, there were 2 brothers. All Might explained. One of them was known as All for One. He was a notorious and powerful villain. With the ability to take and give quirks, he became the biggest villain that had ever lived. His younger brother, however, was weak and quirkless but had a strong sense of justice. He opposed his brother's criminal actions at every step. His brother forced a power stockpiling quirk on him. To this day it's unknown whether it was supposed to be a gift or something to make him submit. However, as it turns out, the younger brother did have a quirk, one that allowed him to pass his quirk down to others. The quirks fused and created a new quirk, which he dubbed One for All. This quirk was passed down through generations, each user adding power to it, until it went to me. I took down and ultimately killed him, but now it seems like he's back somehow and just as dangerous as ever, and I am not sure I can stop him. However, you young Mirio can. You are the perfect successor. Mirio Tagata, will you take my quirk? Mirio's head was spinning. This was so much to take in. After taking a second to absorb all this information, Mirio answered, perfect. Now wait, what? All Might said in disbelief. Izuku and Nezu were also in shock from Mirio's answer. I'm flattered, but I want to be number 1 with my own power, Mirio said. Besides, maybe if you give that quirk to someone with a weaker quirk but is just as heroic, we can have more capable, powerful heroes instead of just one really powerful hero. You don't understand, Mirio, Izuku said. One for All is not something that can just be given to anyone. Not only do we have to find someone incredibly heroic, we also need to find someone whose DNA is compatible. What? All Might asked. Or right, we forgot to explain this to you, Nezu said. While Batman was analyzing your DNA, he found out something interesting about One for All. Some people's DNA is more compatible with One for All than others, Izuku explained. Back then, this wasn't too much of an issue. However, with how much One for All has grown in power, if someone with a low compatibility were to use it, there would be drastic consequences. If you have a 0% compatibility, you would explode the minute to gain the quirk, killing you and probably everyone in the city you're in, Nezu said. If you had a 10 to 20% compatibility, then you would only explode if you attempted to use it, Izuku explained. At about 30 to 40%, you would be able to use it, but it would permanently cripple you, Nezu continued. At 50%, using would break every bone in your body, but to a recoverable degree, Izuku said. At 60%, you would break your bones. However, it may be possible for your body to adjust to the quirks, and with training and constant use of it, you would be able to control it, Nezu said. At 70 to 90%, you would be able to use the quirk freely in the same way All Might does, Izuku said. We don't know what happens at 100%, however, Nezu said. For reference, I have a 60% compatibility, Nezu has a 0% compatibility, and All Might has an 80% compatibility, Izuku said. And you, Mirio, have a 100% compatibility. When we said you were the perfect successor, we mean that in every way you could think of. What are the odds? Mirio said. Either way, I refuse. Mirio, think about what you're doing. Think of how many people you could save, Izuku said. And think about how many people could be saved if it was me and someone with this quirk were out there saving people, Mirio said. 2 heads are better than 1. I say you give this to someone who may not be as physically strong but has the heart of a hero. Time is running up, Mirio, Izuku said. Sooner or later All Might is going to have to retire, or even worse, he dies. We need to have a new symbol of peace lined up before that happens. A symbol of peace is great and all, but I'm not sure that's the best solution, Mirio said. All Might is great. He's probably one of the best heroes that ever existed, but his existence kinda causes people and even pros to get complacent. I've seen pros just wait around instead of trying to help. They think, why even try? I'll never be as good as All Might. True, but thanks to the presence of All Might, villains give up just as easily, Izuku said. The crime rate has gone down because people treat All Might like an unstoppable force. When All Might steps down, and you inevitably become the next #1 hero, you will be underwhelming in comparison. Villains will get overconfident. The crime rate will spike, and when people look to you for salvation, you won't be able to fix everything. And while All Might isn't able to fix everything either, he's able to mask his failures behind overwhelming power, something you in your current state simply can't do. People will lose hope, chaos will ensue. The villains will take advantage of this, and the crime will escalate to the point where heroes can't handle it. Izuku paused. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Having multiple capable heroes is a sound strategy, Izuku admitted. But our society was not built on a sound strategy. Our society was built on one strong pillar. If that pillar breaks and is not replaced, our society will crumble. And if the pillar is replaced by a weaker one, then people will panic, making the weight the new pillar must carry even greater until the weight is too much to bear and it breaks. If we could establish many new pillars, that would be ideal. But we don't have time. We need to replace the pillar now, and then we can worry about making more pillars. Mirio shook his head. I don't believe society is that fragile. When I look outside, people are happy when the villains attack and the heroes come. They smile and cheer without fear. Even if the hero that comes isn't All Might. That's because if the heroes lose, they think All Might will come in and save the day. Even if things look bleak, All Might will come. All Might will fix everything, Izuku said. If that belief isn't there, then people won't be cheering. They'll be running for their lives, an action that demoralizes the heroes and may even cause them to run. Izuku looked out the window. Society may seem stable. It might even be considered stable to some degree. But all it takes is one wrong action, one bad day, and everything changes. Seeing the symbol of peace fall, losing your home, hearing the sound of a gun go off, and seeing your mother's dead body hit the floor. The tension in the room increased, as the tone Izuku used and the clenching of his fist clued everyone on the fact that that last statement was personal. No one else in the room spoke for a while, trying to wait out the tension. Eventually, Mirio spoke. Batman, you're talking about All Might like he's a drug. And if that's the case, then I definitely can't accept. Society should not be reliant on just one person. Tamaki, Nejire, everyone in my class, all of the first years. It would be unfair to have all their hard work overlooked. Even if society falls like you said, me and all the other heroes will be there to pick up the pieces and defend the people. Izuku was about to speak, but All Might spoke first. If that is how you feel, then we cannot force you. All Might sighed. But if you ever change your mind, then please let us know. Mirio nodded. Thank you. And with that, he phased to the floor. Izuku grit his teeth. That naive idiot. Does he know what he's done? It's unfortunate, but we can't force him. All Might said. We could, but that would probably be a bad idea, Nezu said. All Might, you can leave now. Me and Batman have things to discuss. All right, have a nice day. And it was a pleasure to meet you, Batman. All Might said, shaking Izuku's hand. And it was an honor working with you, Izuku said. Meanwhile, with Tamura and Kurogiri. Tamura and Kurogiri sat in prison transport van, ready to be carted away to a holding facility. Kurogiri was being kept unconscious by drugs being injected into his body, so that way he couldn't warp out. Tamura had special finger cuffs that kept him from being able to put all 5 of his fingers on anything. The police had been kind enough to put his father's hand on his face, so at least he had that. His broken arm was still in a cast as well as his wrist. His face was also covered in bandages. The pain was a constant reminder of just how much he failed. Game over. I got a game over. To a mini-boss, Tamura thought. He wanted to scratch his neck but he couldn't, and it was driving him mad. No, Batman's not a mini-boss. He's not even a regular boss. He's a secret boss. One of those infuriating enemies the devs put in to fuck with you. Suddenly the truck stopped. Tamura heard sounds of fighting and all the guards around him went up to the front. After a few seconds, the fighting stopped. And then Clayface walked into the back. About time, Tamura said. If Clayface could roll his eyes, he would. Clayface turned his hand into an axe and broke Tamura's cuffs. Looks like Batman beat you up pretty bad, Clayface said. Don't worry, I don't think any amount of punching could make you uglier than you already are. Do your job, Clayface, or do we need to throw her into a cement mixer to remind you of your place? Tamura threatened. Clayface glared at him, but said nothing, before going to release Kurogiri. Once Kurogiri wakes up, we can leave, Clayface said. No one knows the truck's been hijacked, so we got plenty of time. Great, Tamura said sarcastically. Meanwhile, with All for One. Well, that could have gone better. All for One said. That is an understatement. We lost the Namu, King Shark, as well as many other potential members, said an unknown bald man in a lab coat. Yes, the loss of that Namu, in particular, is a big loss, after all the resources that went into it. The doctor said. At least we were able to recover Tamura and Kurogiri. All for One said. I suppose we will just have to alter our plan. How should we attack UA? Next, do you have any suggestions? Hugo Strange. Strange shook his head. We don't. All for One said in a confused tone. We've given away our advantage. They know about the League, they know about the Namus, and they likely know that you are alive. Strange said. We've established ourselves as a threat, and Batman is likely going to start focusing on us. And that is not good. Batman looks through the shadows and forces things into the light. They are likely giving one for all to Mirio Tagada as we speak, and we currently have nothing to combat that. For now, we need to go back into the shadows and wait for an opportunity to strike. So you're suggesting we lie in wait and build our strength? All for One asked, seeing as we are at a disadvantage and can't risk being exposed. I agree. Tamura will not be pleased though. Strange chuckled. He will learn, old friend. He will learn. For now, let us search for new recruits. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Helena sat on a park bench alone, waiting for someone. Where is she? Helena asked herself. How is she this late? I stopped for ice cream. Helena screamed, quickly looking behind her to see Toga standing there with an ice cream cone. How did you do that? Helena asked. No one had ever managed to sneak up on her before. I'm really sneaky, Toga said cheerfully. I can see that. Or I guess I should say, I couldn't see that. Helena sighed. So why do you want to keep my secret? Toga asked, taking a lick of her ice cream. Money, power, me. What? No. Helena said, her face getting red from Toga's suggestion. I want to get training from Batman. Oh, Toga said. I'll have to ask Batsy about that, but maybe he'll do it. Great, Helena said. So wanna hang out? Sure. I say we go to the movies. I heard they have a new slasher movie out. Toga said excitedly. Oh, I love those movies. Nothing more cathartic than watching idiots get slaughtered. Helena said. I just like the blood. Toga said. Well, come on, let's go. I'll pay. Helena said, dragging Toga along. You got the stuff? Asked one villain to another. Yeah, we got it, said the other villain. Hidden deep in the forest was a warehouse, where 10 villains were performing a drug trade. The villains providing the drugs were about to hand them over when suddenly, the lights went out. What the AHHH? One of the villains shouted. What happened? What's going on? Another one of the villains said. Suddenly, they heard the sound of running water, and then a wave filled the room. All the villains' screams were quickly muffled, the water rapidly filling the warehouse. After a few minutes, the water drained out of the warehouse, leaving everything, including the villains, a soggy mess. Outside the warehouse were Izuku, Mizu, and Hasu. Nice job, Izuku said, holding up the case of drugs he had swiped when the lights had gone out. Everything went according to plan. And you did a great job as usual with your ninja thing, Izuku, Hasu said. Honey, you're not supposed to use his name when on duty, Mizu scolded. Thank you, Mizu, Izuku said. At least you understand the concept of secret identities. By the way, where is Himi, I mean Red Hood? Hasu asked. Izuku sighed. She's with Eraserhead and her friends. Meanwhile, with Toga and her friends, in an abandoned factory, 22 villains stood guard of their hostage, an unconscious little girl that was the child of a rich family. There were 2 guards at the entrance of the building, 19 production area of the factory, and 1 was guarding the office where the kid was being held. The 2 guards outside were standing tall, looking out for anything suspicious, or at least one of them was. The other one was fast asleep. Then, the awake guard saw something move in the shadows. What was that? The guard said. What was what? Asked a voice, presumably the other guard. How did you wake up so the villain's body went limp? Knock yourself out, commanded Shinso. The guard took the butt of his gun and slammed it against his face. The guards in the front are out, Shinso said, pressing down on the communicator in his ear. Good job, Nightwing, Helena said over the comms. Red Hood, do you have the kid? Yup, Toga said. I brought him to the roof and I'm getting back into position now. Good, I'll take the lead then, Helena said. Nightwing, you watch out for strays. On it, Huntress, Shinso responded. Red Hood, are you back in position? Helena asked. Sure am, Toga said. Alight, let's see who can take down the most thugs. Helena smirked. Then the smoke bombs hit the floor. What? One of the villains shouted before he was kicked in the face by Toga. One, Toga said. Helena popped out of the shadows, shooting 2 villains in the head with her specially made arrows. They weren't very sharp, but they were dense enough to knock out any ordinary thug. 2, Helena said. Toga appeared in front of 3 villains. She kicked down one of them and slashed the other 2 with her knife. 4, Toga said cheerfully. 3 more villains tried running towards the voices, only to step in Helena's electric bear traps, knocking them out. 5, Helena said, before shooting a villain behind her. 6, Toga threw 2 knives, covered in sleeping poison, at 2 more villains, before flip-kicking 1 villain, getting up and elbowing another. 1 more villain ran at her and attempted to swing at her, but Toga just dodged and kicked him in the nuts. That's 9. Helena threw one of her electric bear traps at one of the guy's chest, before dodging a hail of bullets and shooting 2 more thugs. I'm at 9 too. 1 more. The last villain had enough common sense to get the hell out of there. He ran for the exit but was shocked to find Shinso waiting for him with his capture gear and electric Eskrima sticks. That's 3 for me. Oh, Toga and Helena groaned. Damn it, Shinso, now we're tied. Suddenly an idea came to Toga, making her smirk deviously. I mean, technically since I took out the one who was guarding that kid, I took down 10. That doesn't count, Helena said. That was before we started. It was before you started. Hood just started sooner, Shinso said with a slight smirk. Oh, go fuck yourself, bird boy, Helena said, giving Shinso the finger. Hood, Izuku said over the comms. Hurry back, or you're going to be late. Oh crap, Toga said. Guys, we have to hurry up or we're gonna be late for the party. Back with the water hose duo. Come on Kota, don't fuss, Mizu said as she finished putting her 10-year-old son in a tux. After Izuku dropped them off at their house, they started getting ready immediately. I hate this, Kota said. Why is Uncle Izuku forcing us to wear these stupid clothes? I don't like them either, but it's Melissa's birthday. She and Izuku have done a lot for us, so it would be disrespectful not to look our best, Hasu said, adjusting his own clip-on tie. You too, Mizu sighed. Well, for one, like dressing up for events. Yeah, because you look amazing, Hasu said casually. Mizu blushed. Save the compliments for later, dear. You know how Kota feels about that. What, I'm just telling the truth, Hasu said. Oh, come here you, Mizu said, giving her husband a kiss. Kota cringed. Gross. Back with Izuku. Izuku looked in the mirror, attempting to tie his tie. I spend most of my life training in the harshest conditions possible and then going on to fight villains without a quirk. And yet the most impossible task I've come across is this tie. Izuku lamented. Knock knock. Come in, Izuku said. Melissa walked into the room, already in her blue and white party dress, her hair tied into a ponytail with a black bow. Oh, well, I knew you would look nice, although I suppose seeing it has a different impact from imagining it. Izuku mumbled. You look nice. Melissa blushed while giggling a little at the same time. Thanks, I'm sure you'll look nice when you fix whatever is going on with your tie. Izuku blushed with embarrassment and sighed. I can't do ties. Melissa raised an eyebrow. Yes, I'm aware of how strange that is, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, I can never seem to get this right, Izuku said. Melissa laughed. Well, it looks like there's something the Dark Knight can't do. Need some help? That would be appreciated, Izuku said. After a few minutes, Melissa had managed to get his tie in a presentable state. There, Melissa said. Melissa, Izuku said. I don't think I can ever thank you enough. It's just a tie, Izuku. Melissa giggled. Not just for the tie. Izuku smiled. For everything. You've made me more effective than I could have ever dreamed to be by myself. You've done so much for me I could stay here all day talking about it. But honestly, I'm also just really happy you're here. Those years back when I was training ... the only reason I was able to endure them was because my anger was fueling me. They were really lonely, although that may be my fault. Thank you for putting those days to an end. There was a short pause after that until Melissa suddenly hugged him. This confused Izuku a bit. What are you? I'm hugging you, Melissa said. You don't get to say something that sappy without getting a hug. Izuku still wasn't really used to physical affection. Toga was an exception to that rule considering she was never all that retrained around him. But from anyone else, it was still weird. Up until Toga came around, the only affectionate touch Izuku had received since his mother died was never consensual. But this ... this was nice. Much to Melissa's surprise and delight, Izuku hugged her back. A few hours later, all the guests had arrived and the party had finally started. After a brief opening speech, the guests started talking among themselves. Izuku was currently standing by the punch bowl, trying not to get noticed, and failing. I don't think I recognize you, said a black-haired man walking towards him. I'm Harvey Urazu. You may know me as Equinox. Deku Komori, Izuku answered. He only gave his name to people he trusted, so very few people knew that someone named Izuku Midoriya existed. Melissa and Bakugo being the only people he knew of to figure it out by themselves. I'm one of Melissa's friends. She does get around, Harvey said, his fake smile never faltering. Well, I have to go make sure my sisters aren't fooling around. They're the reason I got invited to this place after all. Nice to meet you. Same, Izuku said. After Harvey walked away, Izuku heard a far more familiar voice. Man, I hate fakes. Bakugo walked up to Izuku with his signature frown. He moves like a puppet, Izuku said. Everything he does is controlled, most likely by his parents. Poor guy. Yeah, what a schmuck, Bakugo said. Anyway, it's been a while, nerd. How have things been going? Well, Izuku answered. No more major incidents. No billion-dollar tech has gotten destroyed recently. And I haven't almost died since the USJ incident. Yeah, speaking of that, have you found any leads of the League of Villains? Bakugo asked. Izuku shook his head. They've likely been keeping to themselves. They lost a lot in the USJ incident, so it's likely they're rebuilding their strength and staying hidden. Smart move. Cowards, Bakugo said. Anyway, how's Himiko? She's still an annoying little shit. She is still energetic and does not understand the value of personal space. Yes, Izuku confirmed. How about you? I heard you followed my advice and got an intern. Yeah, he's the fake redhead who's gulping down the food like a fucking pig, Bakugo said loudly, making sure to get Kirishima's attention. Kirishima gulped down what he was eating before quickly running over to his mentor with an embarrassed look on his face. Sir, that was not manly. Neither is leaving the rest of us with no fucking food, Bakugo said. Now introduce yourself. Oh, Kirishima said, noticing Izuku. My name is Kirishima Ijiro. Deku Komori. Izuku lied. That's his fucking fake name. Bakugo thought. Pleasure to meet you. I didn't know Bakubro had any more friends. Kirishima said. Hey, Bakugo shouted. We were old childhood friends, Izuku said. Wow, so was he nicer as a kid? Kirishima asked. There was a long pause. Kahaha. Izuku started laughing, gathering attention. Izuku quickly regained his composure. No, he was not. He was worse. Much, much worse. Bakugo wanted to feel offended, but he really didn't have the right to, considering what he did in the past. Oh, Kirishima said awkwardly. Well, anyway, I got food to eat. See ya, Bakugo said. Bye, Kirishima said. Izuku nodded as they walked off. So you can laugh. Hello, Helena, Izuku said. Nice to see you bats. Or should I say, Deku, Helena said. That could not be any faker if you tried. Seems to fool people well enough, Izuku said. How did you figure out it was me? Voice modifiers can fool normal ears, but if I listen carefully, I can hear the real voice in there thanks to my quirk, Helena explained. Once again proving that your best work would be undercover work, Izuku said. So you're gonna tell me what your real name is? Helena asked. It's Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Toga whispered into her ear. Izuku gave Toga a disapproving look, but she just shrugged her shoulders. She already knows what you look like. Izuku sighed. He didn't really like that Helena knew about all this, although he was happy to train her. That Shinso kid would even join in on occasion. Speaking of Shinso, he could faintly see him talking to Koda and on the other side of the ballroom. Batsy, how could you? Toga whined. I was supposed to be the one to make you laugh. Has he never laughed before? Helena asked. Nope. Every time I make a pun or joke he either doesn't get it or says that it's funny without laughing. Toga complained. I'm not really a big fan of puns or jokes. They either don't make sense or are too predictable for me. Izuku admitted. Toga pouted. One day I will make you laugh at a joke. Helena shook her head. Alright, Joker, let's go to your room and have some of that fun you promised. Oh right, see you in the morning, Toga said as she dragged Helena upstairs to do non-T-rated things. Izuku never personally understood the friends with benefits type of relationship, but he never understood a lot of what was going through Toga's head. She's like his own personal agent of chaos. Izuku shook his head. If I stand by this punch bowl all night, Melissa is going to scold me. I guess I better at least move around a bit. Maybe I should talk to Shinso and Koda. With that in mind, Izuku moved towards the two boys, both of whom had not noticed him at all. So what are you two talking about? Izuku asked. Uncle Zuku, Koda said with a smile on his face. Shinso looked at him strangely. I wasn't aware that one of the water hose duo had a brother. They don't. We're just really close, Izuku explained. My name is Deku Komori. Shinso Hitoshi, Shinso said, introducing himself. He's a second year at UA, Koda said. We were talking about some of his missions. Ah yes, you must be in one of the two classes that got their provisional license early, Izuku said, feigning ignorance. Yup, Shinso said. Test was pretty hard. But most people underestimated me since I held back during the sports festival. Izuku smirked slightly. It had been him who told Shinso not to use his quirk during the sports festival. After all, if you're going to be an underground hero, then having everyone know what your quirk would be pretty detrimental. Yeah, I can see why. You didn't even make it to the part where everyone fought each other, Koda said. It sucked, but it came in handy later on, Shinso said. Izuku nodded. Sounds like it. Well, I'll talk to you later, Koda. And it was nice meeting you, Shinso. See ya, Koda said. Shinso just nodded and Izuku walked away. Izuku looked through the crowd and saw Tenya Ito along with his family, talking to the wild pussycats. Neither Izuku nor Melissa had strong ties to the Ida family. The only reason they had invited them was to try and cheer them up and distract them from the fact that Tensei was missing. I'll find him one day, Izuku swore, and if he's dead, then I'll bring his killers to justice. The pussycats were here for a far less depressing reason. Izuku had worked with them along with the Waterhouse duo in a few cases. Mizu had asked if she could invite them and Melissa said yes. The cover story being that Melissa was close to the duo, so she had invited the two. Izuku liked the pussycats. They were well, a wild bunch, but they were very easy to work with. Helped save a lot of lives. Lastly, Izuku spotted Mirio, entertaining a group of guests. Izuku sighed. He could already hear Melissa nagging him. Go make up with him. Stop being so childish. Izuku still worked with Mirio, but not as often as he used to. And they didn't really talk outside of work. And honestly, Izuku had no intention of changing that. Deku, he heard Melissa say. Come here. Izuku looked over to see Melissa standing next to David's shield and All Might. Izuku walked over and Melissa introduced him. Dad, Uncle Yagi. This is my friend Deku Komori, Melissa explained. He helps me with the company, although he insists on not officially being a part of it. It's a pleasure to meet you, David said, shaking Izuku's hand. Little Melissa already has a boyfriend. They grow up so fast. All Might said. He's not my boyfriend. He's just a friend. Melissa clarified with a blush on her face. If I recall, didn't you mention you lived with him? David asked. Well, it's a rather large house, Melissa defended. It would feel empty with just me and Alfred. Whatever you say, David teased, only to get playfully punched by Melissa. I never introduced myself. I'm Toshinori Yagi. I'm a close friend of David. All Might said. It's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku said, shaking the hero's hand. And it's an honor to meet with the famous David Shield, former partner of All Might and possibly smartest person alive. Although I would say Melissa is catching up with you in that regard. Deku, Melissa blushed even more. I'd think so. She's been working on projects since she was 6 and hasn't stopped since then. She's an absolute genius, David said. Dad, Melissa said, her face getting even redder. It's true. I remember when she gave me some support gear she made. I swear it lasted longer than some of the things Dave made me. All Might said, forgetting he was supposed to be in civilian mode. Uncle, Melissa said, her face now resembling a tomato. Then the slow music started to play. Melissa had a realization and grabbed Izuku's hand. Oh hey, let's dance, Melissa said, pulling Izuku away from her father and uncle. Melissa pulled Izuku onto the dance floor and the two started a slow dance. Any reason you wanted to dance so suddenly? Izuku asked. Because if I stayed, I'm pretty sure you three would have embarrassed me to death, Melissa said. So you figured the less embarrassing option was to pull me into a typically romantic dance, with typically romantic music. In the middle of the dance floor, Izuku said, pointing out the obvious flaw in her rushed plan. Melissa realized this and her face went back to its tomato-like state. Not wanting to see the stares they were definitely getting, she buried her head into Izuku's chest. That's probably not helping, Izuku said, himself blushing a fair bit. Probably not, Melissa said. But you know what? Screw it. Let's enjoy the moment. Izuku looked momentarily shocked before giving her a shy smile. If that makes you happy. Toga, Helena, and Shinzo were running across the rooftops on their normal patrol route. Man, this is boring, Toga complained. I prefer to use the word peaceful, Shinzo said. That's because you're a boring dude, Helena said. I'm with Hood, we need some action. Toga looked around. Hey, that's a museum. Yes, what's your point? Shinzo asked. Well, isn't that one of the places villains normally try to steal from? Toga asked. I bet if we stay around there, we'll find some villains. That is the dumbest, and she's gone. Shinzo sighed as he watched her run off. I guess we're taking a detour, Helena said, following her. Shinzo shook his head and followed the two over to the museum skylight. Inside the museum was nothing. See, nothing, Shinzo said. Let's go. Come on, just wait a little, Toga whined. It's not like we were doing much before. Helena shrugged. Shinzo face-palmed, but didn't leave. A few minutes passed, and just as they were about to give up, something moved in the shadows. Then 3 figures walked through the museum. I knew it, Toga said in a combination of a scream and a whisper. That is the most convenient bullshit I have ever seen in my life, Shinzo said, in disbelief. Hey, look on the bright side. Now there's ass to kick, Helena said while pulling out her crossbows. Nightwing, take the vent. Huntress, you charge in and I'll follow you while I'm invisible, Toga said. Shinzo nodded and ran towards the ventilation shaft. Helena smirked and shot the glass before jumping down into the medium, with Toga following. Helena landed on her feet and aimed her crossbows at the 3 villains. Freeze. The 3 in question were ... the hero killer Stain and Rei Todoroki, as well as some guy dressed up as the Grim Reaper with a scythe to boot. Okay, Rei said coldly. She brought her foot forward and in what felt like an instant, Helena was encased in a large block of ice. Amateur, Stain said. If she is here, then there could be other heroes around, Rei said. We need to move quick. Toga came out of hiding and slashed Rei in the back. No one freezes my friend. Rei went flying forward into the frozen huntress. Stain pulled out his swords and attacked Toga so fast she could barely react. Toga grinned, before making a fake surprised face. Oh no, what's that behind you? Stain grunted, before using his superior strength to push Toga back. How dumb do you think I am? Toga flew back, doing a flip midair and landed on her feet. Oh, I know what's on your back. A high-voltage batarang. Stain quickly looked to see that Toga had indeed snuck a batarang on his back. Before he could even try and remove, though, it went off and shocked the hero killer. Hehe, bet that was shocking, Toga punned. Now time to wah. Suddenly the Grim Reaper villain popped up behind her and slashed her back with his scythe, sending Toga flying. Toga tumbled back before hitting a wall. Oh, Toga got up and looked at her back. There was a large gash in her hoodie and armor, but lucky it didn't manage to hit Ant Flesh. Toga looked back at where she was standing a second ago, but the villain was gone. He either has an invisibility quirk or teleportation quirk, Toga deduced. Either way, people with those kinds of quirks. Toga ducked under a side swing from behind and slashed the villain with her knife, like to attack from behind. The Reaper villain growled in pain, before sinking into the shadows. Literally. Oh, so he can move through shadows, Toga thought. Then his next attack will probably be from below. Toga moved out of the way as Reaper did exactly what she thought he would, jumping out of the shadow on the ground. Haha, too slow, Toga teased. Suddenly a sword was held to her neck. No, you're too dumb. Stain, who had recovered from his little shock, was now holding Toga with a blade to her neck. Awa, you're no fun, Stainy, Toga whined. Meanwhile, Ray recovered from Toga's attack, freezing over the gash in her back and pulling herself up with the ice. Are you okay? Stain asked. I am fine. Let us continue the mission. Ray said. Hey, you're Ray Todoroki, Toga said. What's an escaped mental patient doing all the way out here with such inconspicuous company? My name is not Todoroki, Ray said, venom dripping from her ice-cold tone. You may refer to me by my real husband's name. Freeze. Luke. Toga raised an eyebrow in confusion. Well, Mrs. Freeze, what are you doing here tonight? Why would I tell you? In fact, we've wasted too much time already. Ray said. Reaper, with me. Stain, you hold her until we've gotten what we need. Toga tilted her head down, making sure no one could see her mouth. But if you do that, you'll miss the surprise, said Toga's voice. Ray stopped and gave Toga a cautious look. What surprise? Then her body went limp, and her pupils widened out. What did you Stain yelled, as Shinso snuck up behind him and jabbing him with his taser Eskrima sticks. After electrocuting Stain for a few seconds, Shinso pulled back his weapons and Stain fell to the floor. Freeze the Reaper guy, Shinso commanded. Ray turned her foot towards Reaper and sent an ice attack at him. Reaper barely managed to sink back into his own shadow before the ice could hit him. Reaper appeared a few feet away from Ray, and Ray just sent more and more ice at him. We need to keep him from using the shadows, Shinso said. Got it, Toga said. Just as Reaper appeared out of another shadow, Toga threw a flash grenade. A burst of light filled the room, getting rid of the shadows around Reaper, making him an easy target for the brainwashed Ray. Reaper was completely encased in a block of ice, taking care of the last villain. Thanks, Nightwing, Toga said. Shinso nodded. Let's free Huntress already. Toga nodded. She's gonna be so mad. She missed all the slice. Suddenly Stain sprung up and cut both of their cheeks. Before the two could even do anything to stop him, Stain licked the blades, paralyzing the both of them. Did you really think it would be that easy? Stain said. Damn it, he was playing possum, Shinso said. But we pumped more volts into him than a Christmas tree. How is he still standing? Toga asked. Sheer willpower, Stain said. I will not fall here. I will herald the dawn to the new hero system. What kind of anime bullshit is that? Shinso said. Stain frowned and decided to ignore them for now. He had a job to do. Stain walked up to the still brainwashed Ray and slapped her. Ray immediately broke out of the trance and gave Stain an infuriated look. Given the circumstances, I will excuse that. However, if you ever slap me again, I will kill you. Stain just rolled his eyes. Yeah, sure, whatever. Just unfreeze Reaper. Ray raised her hand up to the block of ice and it quickly began to melt. Eventually, Reaper was freed and fell onto the wet floor. Let's go, Ray said, walking away. The two followed her, walking through the museum until they reached their prize. We came here for a diamond, Stain said, looking at their so-called prize. It was what looked like a large diamond behind a display case. However, it seemed to give off a soft glow. It's not a diamond, Ray clarified. It's a krypton. It's an extremely rare mineral that has so much untapped scientific potential, and it is essential in order to complete the device. Couldn't Anarchy have just bought some? Stain asked. Like I said, it is extremely rare and very valuable, Ray repeated. The government likes to hoard this stuff and Shield Tech has bought all the publicly available samples. So we had no choice but to take this one. Wanting to get this done fast, Ray placed her hand over the glass case and froze it over. Stain hit it with the hilt of his sword, causing it to shatter. Ray grabbed the krypton and looked at Reaper. Get us out of here. Reaper nodded and three moved into the shadows. Reaper grabbed onto them and they all sunk into the shadows. A few hours later, Izuku watched as police swarmed into the museum, looking for any trace of the villains who had stolen the krypton. So did you find anything? Niyamasa asked him. Not much. Nothing that we could use to track them, Izuku said. He looked over to the three who had fought the villains. Shinso and Toga had bandages over their cuts and Helena was in a blanket shivering. From what they told me, the perpetrators were Stain the hero killer. Niyamasa cut him off. Stain, what would the hero killer want with a gem? He asked. Stain is working for someone with much greater ambitions and more tactical mind, Izuku clarified. I can't believe anyone could get that crazy bastard to behave, Naomasa said. Despite what his followers say, Stain could never be the leader of some grand revaluation. His mind is too narrow, his judgment too cloudy, his methods too barbaric and ineffective. Izuku explained. If I were to use a metaphor, Stain is like a sword in a stone, a weapon that can only be wielded by someone he deems worthy. I see, Naomasa said. Well, that certainly makes him much more of a threat. Anyway, who were the other perpetrators? A villain named Reaper and Rei Todoroki, Izuku said. What? Naomasa shouted. What on earth would she be doing with people like that? Actually, scratch that. Where has she been this whole time? No one has seen her since her escape from Arkham all those years ago. I'm almost certain she's working for the same person Stain is working for. But for what reason I don't know. Izuku lied. He liked Naomasa, but he just couldn't tell him something. If he told him about Endeavor, then he might try to arrest the number 2 hero. And that would lead to a whole lot of problems for both Naomasa and the hero community. Speaking of Endeavor, I need to go, Izuku said. I have someone I need to speak to. At the Todoroki house, Shoto walked through the halls of his home cautiously. Over the last year, his father has been rather lax with him in his training. Not to mention he rarely punishes him anymore. And when he does, it's nowhere near as severe as it used to be. He didn't even explain why. And every time they asked, he would get really mad and break something. Fayumi, with her desperate optimism, had convinced herself that her father had felt bad for his previous actions and decided to try and be a better father. Shoto didn't buy that for 1 second, and when he told Natsuo, he agreed that something was up. It was a nice change of pace, although Shoto still dreaded that this new status quo could end at any time. As he was walking, he saw Fayumi with her ear pressed against the door to Endeavor's study. She saw him and swiftly motioned for him to stay quiet and come over here. Shoto did so, curious of what would cause his normally meek sister to eavesdrop, and pressed his ear against the door. Shoto would be progressing so much more if you didn't make me slow down his training. Endeavor shouted angrily. I won't repeat myself again. That was not training. It was abuse, Izuku said. And by the way, your attempts to escape my surveillance are pathetic. I have eyes and ears everywhere. Even if you did find a way out of my grasp, I would just pull you back into it. Shoto knew Batman's augmented voice. While Batman normally stayed away from the press, there were rare occasions in which he would explain certain things on TV. Like how him controlling the bats in his fight against Frightening Bolt was not a quirk, but rather him using a sonic emitter to manipulate their sonar. The questions were, why is he here and what is he talking about? I don't understand why you still take money from me, Endeavor shouted. It's clear you have far more money than any hero agency on the planet. Because it makes you angry, Izuku explained clearly. In all honesty, Endeavor, you're a tool, but a very useful tool. While your crimes are inexcusable, I'm willing to somewhat look over them if it means saving lives. However, I will not allow you to torment your family any further. If I find that you have continued your deplorable actions, then I will not hesitate to end your hero career and have the police take your children far, far away from you. Suddenly everything made sense. Shoto had always wondered how the world's greatest detective, known for exposing the crimes of pro-heroes, never managed to figure out that the number 2 hero was an abusive asshole. The answer was, he did know, and he put a stop to it. It also explained why his father would ever work with the water hose duo. Batman must have forced him. He had so much dirt on him that Endeavor had no choice but to do whatever he wanted. The thought of his father being powerless before someone who was known for not even using a quirk, being used like a tool ... it put a smile on his face, something no one had managed to do for years. Fayumi, on the other hand, was not so happy. She had always feared that Batman would figure out what her father had done, and the police would then no doubt make sure they never saw him again. And while that would have its advantages, it would completely destroy any chance there was of fixing their family, which in Fayumi's eyes was not the impossible task everyone made it out to be. While she was happy that Batman didn't report her father, this meant 2 things. 1, Batman could, at any moment, expose her father and crush her dreams, and all it would take is her father going out of line, which was not hard to imagine him doing. 2, it meant her father was still a prick. He hadn't felt bad about his actions or decided to become better. He was forced to by an outside force. Still, perhaps now that he's not as aggressive as normal, he can see us more as his children instead of tools, Fayumi thought. But enough about that, Izuku said. I've come with ... very important news. Well, spit it out. I have things to do, Endeavor demanded impatiently. Well, you had better put them on hold, because your wife just stole a krypton from a museum alongside Stain the hero killer, Izuku said. Everyone froze, Endeavor included. What? Thought Shoto and Fayumi in disbelief. What? Endeavor said, all the rage leaving his voice, his tone shifting to pure shock. Your wife is working with Stain. And not just him, she is most likely working with more villains, under a very powerful one. Izuku explained. If I had to guess, she most likely wants to kill you. No ... that's not. Ray wouldn't, Endeavor said in shock. We have witnesses. She even used her quirk. Izuku said, that poor woman who you drove insane is likely coming back to return all the pain and suffering you gave her. And she has the backing of many dangerous villains. Todoroki, I will say this once. If she kills a single person, I'm holding you responsible. That means everything you've done will be exposed. Your hero career over. Your children taken. Everything you own gone. And I will do everything in my power to make sure you get locked away for as long as possible. Understood. There was a long pause before Endeavor said, understood. Good. Now before I go. Hood said that Ray talked about someone called her true husband and called herself Mrs. Freeze. Izuku revealed, do you know anything about that? There was another long pause before Endeavor spoke again. Her first husband. His name was Victor Freeze. I already looked him up, but I couldn't find any connection between him and your wife. Why is that? Izuku asked. I hid it. I hid it much more thoroughly than anything else. Endeavor admitted. It was much easier too. Victor wasn't a celebrity and Ray had no family, so making sure no one knew about the two's marriage was easy. Why hide it? Izuku asked. Endeavor paused again. I married Ray soon after Victor died. I would not allow anyone to see me as a rebound. Izuku looked at him with suspicion. While something like that did seem in character with the egomaniac that was Endeavor, but it also seemed kinda weak, like there was something else. Is that the only reason? Izuku asked. Yes, Endeavor said, this time a bit too quickly. There was a pause, and then Izuku broke the silence. We're done then. But before I leave, suddenly the door opened and Shoto and Fayumi fell forward onto the floor. I need to speak to Shoto outside, Izuku said. Outside the Todoroki house. Are you going to be okay? Izuku asked. Yeah, Shoto lied. I understand that what you just heard was a lot. Just know that I will do everything in my power to get your mother the help she needs, Izuku said sincerely. Thank you, Shoto said. It means a lot. Izuku nodded. Now that the niceties are out of the way, time to be the Dark Knight. You don't use your fire. Why? Izuku asked, acting like he didn't already know. Simple. To spite him. When I become #1 hero without his power, I will be rejecting my father, Shoto said. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Izuku deadpanned. Shoto looked at him in shock. He had expected him to understand, seeing as they both seemed to hate his father. First off, when you become #1, that is the most condescending thing I have heard in weeks, Izuku said. There are tons of heroes who are above you in skill, power, etc. The fact that you think you can be #1 with half a quirk is an insult to every pro hero out there. It's also an insult to everyone with a weak quirk or no quirk at all. People who wouldn't have died trying to get half of what you have. If you're trying not to be like your father, lose the atrocious ego. Shoto wanted to say something, but Izuku sent a spine-chilling glare at the boy. I'm not done, Izuku said. Secondly, you're rejecting your father by doing what he wants, but in a different way. That is stupid and childish. You want to be the #1 hero and surpass All Might. Your father wants his bloodline to surpass All Might and become the #1 hero. Your two goals match perfectly. And unless you plan on changing your dreams, there is nothing you can do to change that. This fantasy world in which you can piss off your dad and achieve your dream by just using half your quirk. It's nothing more than that, a fantasy. Try as you might. You were made by him, your mother, and nothing can change that. But Shoto was cut off again. Third, what do you mean, his power? Izuku asked. Your quirk belongs to you. All of it. Saying that it's his quirk, just because it's a fire quirk, is ridiculous. Fire quirks are very common. Even my dad had a fire quirk. The only thing that makes yours and Endeavor's special is that they're more power than most other fire quirks. And even then, there are a good chunk of people whose quirks would allow them to reach the same kind of power and skill Endeavor has. They just either aren't heroes or they don't possess the sheer stubbornness and willpower that he has. Endeavor does not own all fire quirks. My mother said it looks like him. Shoto spat out. She said my left side reminded her of him. Yes, because you are his son. And that side has his red hair. Izuku said. If you dyed the right side of your hair red, it would probably remind her of him. You are his son. He passed down some of his features to you. If you want to look less like him, then dye the left side of your head white. Also, when your mother said this, she was already pushed to insanity. I hate to be this blunt, but you are literally taking your life advice from a severely mentally ill woman who poured boiling hot water on your eye in an attempt to disfigure you. What part of that sounds like a good idea to you? Shoto wanted to refute him, to say that he didn't know anything, but he couldn't. Batman seemed to know everything about him. He threw all his thoughts, promises, and dreams at his face and made them sound stupid and contradictory. And he couldn't find a signal defense somehow. It all seemed so logical in his head. So why is it that when Batman says it, it suddenly sounds so asinine? Lastly, have you ever thought about all the lives that would be lost just because you didn't use your fire? Izuku asked. Not practicing with it leads to poor usage. Meaning when you're a pro and the only way to save someone is to use your fire, you won't be able to. because you decided not to use it. What then? I'll tell you what. You're going to feel a sense of never-ending guilt and despair. You'll know you could have saved them, and it will haunt you till the day you die. And if the day comes where this does happen, and someone dies because you didn't want to use your left side, I will find you and read you a list of that person's name, their family, their hobbies, their likes and their dislikes, so that way you can better know the person you failed. And then maybe you'll have known a tenth of the pain you will have caused that person's loved ones. Shoto was still. He truly never considered such things. He always insisted that his ice would be enough. But the possibility that it's not, the chance someone could die because of his issues. Izuku saw the boy become pale and knew it was time to stop. Izuku sighed. I can understand how you came to that conclusion. When you're a mentally scarred 5-year-old, things like that make sense. And to be honest, this is just another thing we can blame on your father. If he had gotten you into therapy, then perhaps this could have been avoided. But your father is an idiot, and because of that, you had to suffer. Izuku put his hand on Todoroki's shoulder. Not using your fire does not show that you're free of your father. It does the opposite. It shows that he broke you. Every time you don't use your fire, it's because of him. So take my advice. Stop letting him hurt you. Please. Shoto stayed silent. He didn't know what to say. Izuku backed away. You're a good kid, Shoto. Don't let your father ruin that. I'm going to make your father send you to therapy. I look forward to seeing the hero you become. With that, Izuku aimed his grappling hook up and grappled onto the Batwing, which was there the whole time apparently, in cloaked mode. Izuku climbed into the pilot's seat and sped off. About time. Toga groaned. That took so long. Why didn't you let me come? I would have loved to punch Endeavor. As much as I would have loved to let you. That might make him snap, Izuku said. As much as I want to expose him, I can't. He's too useful. We're going to need him for when all might falls. And I hope to God that when night falls, well, have enough light to fight off the darkness. 1 week. 1 week and there was no sign of Freeze. Izuku has been working nonstop to try and figure out where she was located. And he may have a lead. A truck full of parts that could very easily be used for cryotech was seen being delivered to a secluded warehouse. The truck was owned by Anarchy, so the chances of this being related to Freeze was high. Izuku decided to go in alone. Toga was looking after Helena, who had gotten sick as a result of being frozen. Izuku glided down onto the warehouse from the Batwing. He landed on the roof and looked through it with his detective vision. No one's here, Izuku thought. Was this a false lead? I should probably investigate it anyway. With that, Izuku went to the door that led to the inside of the building and kicked it open. He headed down the stairs until he reached the ground floor of the warehouse. Izuku looked around at the storage crates. All this stuff looks useful for making cryotech. Perhaps this is a decoy. And then everything was frozen. The whole warehouse from top to bottom was frozen in just a few seconds. Izuku's armor was entirely frozen inside and out. All his systems stopped functioning, even the anti-freeze function. He was stuck, completely helpless. Anarchy knew you would show up, Rei's voice said. But Izuku couldn't see her. But it sounded like her voice was coming out of a modulator or a loudspeaker. Freeze, Izuku said. Why couldn't I detect you? My new suit has defenses against your tech. Then Rei walked out from behind a container, revealing her new appearance. Her skin was an icy blue, and she was covered from head to toe in somewhat bulky armor. She even had a glass dome around her head and red goggles on eyes. Izuku's eyes widened. What did you do to yourself? I made myself stronger, she said, but at a cost. By now you must know about the hidden drug, Venom. We received it some time ago, but we knew that whoever sent it to us likely wanted to use us to test it. After analyzing it, I found it would not just increase my quirk's power, but also its drawbacks. My body would become like ice, unable to withstand the heat. So that armor, it's to keep you cold. Izuku guessed. Correct, she said. How ironic. This state I am in, it is similar to my daughter. I'm assuming you're not talking about Fayumi, Izuku said. No, Rei said. Endeavor has made it very difficult for anyone to find out about my true past. I'm assuming you would like me to inform you of it. Yes, please, Izuku said. There was a short pause as Rei readied herself. When I was young, I loved the cold, the beauty of ice and snow, combined with the numbing feeling I got when it touched my skin. As you can imagine, the day I developed my quirk was one of the happiest in my life. The other children and I would sneak off to places where no one would notice us, and I would use my quirk to let us all play in the snow. As I got older, I wanted to use the cold to bring joy to people past just simply playing with it. So I became a scientist, one of the heads of cryotechnology. One day I was sent over to America to work with the best of the best in my field, and that's when I met him. Victor Freeze, Izuku said. Yes, Rei said, a small smile forming on her face. The two of us hit it off almost immediately. We both wanted to use the snow and ice we loved so much to help others. But Victor had greater ambitions than I ever did. I would have just been fine with helping the field develop. But Victor wanted to change the world. I was inspired by his ambition, and the two of us worked side by side, day and night. With Victor being as charming and passionate as he was, how could I not fall in love with him? We dated and eventually, we got married. Another one of the happiest parts of my life. After that, we continued to work together and then we had a child. A beautiful little girl. We named her after a princess in one of our favorite movies. Nora Freeze. For 6 years I was the happiest woman in the world. My last 6 years of happiness. And then, that day happened. Ray's tone turned from happily reminiscent to cold fury. It was bring your child to work day. A day I had been looking forward to up until that point. She said, but of course, I got sick. Victor forced me to stay home and recover, and he took Nora to the lab. But sick person. The only one I hate more than Endeavor. He took an assault rifle, and he attacked the building. Victor was killed, and Nora's quirk went off. The whole building was frozen over. Once they got inside, they found that everyone had been killed by the ice. And Nora, my dear sweet Nora, the backlash of her quirk affected her like nothing I had ever seen before. She was like an ice sculpture, still alive, but frozen so deeply, if she ever thought it could cause her to fall apart. The doctors told me they couldn't do anything about it. They said it would be best to simply let her die. But I would not allow it. I took her and kept her in cryo chamber to keep her from thawing. I spent years trying to fix her, but soon enough my funds began running dry, and people weren't willing to fund me out of the kindness of their hearts. Then Endeavor showed up. He came to me with a proposition. Marry him and bear his children. And in exchange, he would give me funding to save Nora. In any other situation, I would have been able to see him as the horrid man he was. But I was so desperate, I accepted without thinking twice. I moved back to Japan and continued my research, alongside giving birth to Endeavor's children. Then the tone of her voice shifted again, this time to a more regretful one. I never really gave much attention to my new children. I was so focused on saving Nora that I allowed that man to do as he pleases with with my children. I can barely even remember Toya. Did you know that? I can barely even remember the face of my own child. He hurt them so much, and I did nothing to stop it. My only thoughts were about Nora. Then, after Shoto, he stopped. Endeavor came to my lab and he told me he would stop funding me. He said that I was wasting my time, that she was beyond saving and that I needed to move on. Out of rage, I attacked him. He knocked me unconscious, and when I woke up, I ran to my lab, and Nora was gone. I demanded to know where she was. He just looked at me and said nothing, but he didn't need to say anything. I knew the second I woke up. My daughter was dead. Ray stopped talking for a moment, her eyes glued to the floor. Afterwards, he pretended like nothing happened, like he didn't kill the only child given to me by the man I loved. I knew there was not much I could do about it, and in my broken, defeated state, I tried to fill the hole Nora left with Shoto. But I was broken, far too broken to be the mother Shoto deserved. When I looked at his left side, I saw the man who killed my daughter, and in a fit of madness, I heard him. Ray said, I heard pour boiling water on the face of my own child. That the last straw for Endeavor and for myself. As I was being hauled away to Arkham, I saw my children for the first time. Not in a literal sense, of course, I had seen them many times prior, but that is when I truly saw them. I saw the disgust in Natsuo's eyes. I saw Fayumi's heartbreak. I saw Shoto's newly damaged face. I saw the empty space, where Toya should have stood. I wondered what he would have thought, and I was horrified to find that I didn't know. And as I sat in Arkham, I reflected on the monster I became. And what's worse, I knew the entire time I was there, that Endeavor was still hurting my son. Each second I sat in Arkham, I wondered what torment he would put him through. One day, I decided that I had enough. I broke free of Arkham and wandered the streets looking for a way to stop him and get my revenge. That's when Anarchy found me. I told him my story, and he agreed to help me. No strings attached. And the rest, you can figure out. Freeze, Izuku said sadly. He knew Endeavor was hiding something. But this was it was too much. Izuku shed a tear. Is that a tear, Batman? Ray asked. I don't think anyone has seen you cry before. I keep my emotions in check. That doesn't mean they aren't there. Izuku said. I'm sorry for everything you've been through. I wish there was something I could have done to help. You have done enough, Batman, Ray said. You have stopped him from continuing to hurt my child. And you have caused him great frustration. That is enough. The reason I tell you this is because I don't want to kill you. Anarchy also likes you a fair bit. So I will warn you, stay out of my way. Endeavor is a monster. You know that now. You could help rid the world of him. And all you have to do is nothing. There is a pause. And will you do after you've killed Endeavor? Izuku asked. Then I shall end my own life, Ray said. Nora and Victor are dead. I can't go back to my other children and pretend to be their mother. Once he is gone, I will have no reason to live. There was another pause before Izuku responded. I'm sorry, Freeze, but I can't let you take a life. Izuku said, sadness evident in his tone. And I can't let you throw away yours. I promised Shoto that I would get you the help you needed. and I never go back on my promises. Shoto ... He still cares about me? Ray asked. He does. So does Fayumi. They want to help you. They want their mother back. Izuku said. Silence filled the warehouse and a frozen tear went down Ray's face. Then tell them that I am sorry. But they never had one, Ray said, before aiming her palm at Izuku. The police or the heroes should be here to break you out. But I doubt you'll be healthy afterward. I will warn you one last time. Please stay away. And then everything went dark. A few hours later, Izuku opened his eyes. He was in his bedroom at the manor, thick blankets around his body and an IV drip attached to him. Despite the blankets, Izuku was freezing cold, and his body felt weak. Melissa must have sent Toga to get me when all the suit systems went down, Izuku figured out. ACHOO. Izuku sneezed loudly. Darn it, Izuku thought. I'm definitely sick. Knowing that if he got up he wouldn't make it very far, Izuku decided to stay put and wait for someone to come in. Knowing Toga, she would probably be checking on him every 5 minutes, and judging by the indents on the carpet she had been here 1 minute ago. That meant he had 4 minutes of planning time before he had to move. Endeavor's a lot of things, but he's not a child killer. Assuming no accidents have occurred, that child is probably still alive. If I can find her, I can convince her to stop. But where to look? Endeavor's probably not going to tell me anything, and I probably don't have enough time to pry it out of him. Meaning I'll have to figure out. Ray went to Arkham 9 years ago. After Endeavor cut off her funding, her mental state probably wouldn't have lasted long, so I should look at around that time period for shipments or anything like that paid for by Endeavor. The door opened and Toga came running in and hugged Izuku. Batsy, you're awake, Toga said, nuzzling his face. Himiko, I'm sick. Don't do things like that, Izuku said. No, Himiko said childishly. Izuku heard someone running down the hall and Melissa ran into the room. Izuku's awake, she asked, slightly out of breath. May I remind you that Master Izuku is sick, and I doubt yelling will make him feel any better, Alfred said. It's fine. Alfred, could you please get Himiko off me? Izuku said. At once, sir, Alfred said. He walked up to Himiko and pulled out a spray bottle, before spraying Himiko with it repeatedly. Toga hissed in a cat-like manner and scurried away from Izuku. I don't understand why that works, Melissa said. Thank you for getting me out of there. It would have been bad if someone else freed me and found and took off my mask, Izuku said. But now we need to get back to work. Izuku, you're in no condition to be fighting, Melissa said. I'm not going to fight, Izuku said. I have a plan. Meanwhile, Ray sat in one of Anarchy's meeting rooms, waiting for everyone else to arrive. Shoto, Fayumi, I'm sorry, she thought. Then Anarchy walked in. Sorry for the wait, but I needed to make sure everyone was here. Anarchy went in and sat down at the head of the table. Walking in behind him were Stain and Reaper. Then behind him was a large man in armor that had policeman colors. This man was known as Lockup. Behind him was a man in black, with golden gauntlets and shoulder pads, as well as a helmet that resembled one of a knight's. He was Prometheus. Once they had all sat down, Anarchy spoke. Before we begin, I would like to introduce 2 new members of our team. Dabai, Spinner, please come in. 2 more men came into the room. One was a lizard man whose clothes almost exactly matched Stain's. The other one seemed strangely familiar to Ray. He had dark hair and scars all over his body. He was giving her a shocked look, one that quickly changed into a glare. Spinner quickly ran up to Stain and bowed. It is an honor to meet you, sir. I can't wait to fight alongside you and enforce your ideals. Stain just gave him an unimpressed look, before turning that look over Anarchy. He's more skilled than he looks, Anarchy defended. Ray looked at Dabai, trying to figure out where she had seen him. Do I know you? No, Dabai said. No, you don't. For whatever reason, some part of her felt hurt by that answer. Well, you 2 take a seat, and I'll tell you how we are going to kill Endeavor, Anarchy said. Scarecrow isn't joining us, Stain asked. No, he is still working on his toxin, Anarchy said. Dabai and Spinner both took their seats and Anarchy started speaking. Alright, first, Reaper will take you all into the mall as well as some cameras. Lockup will take a few hostages, and after everyone else had fled, Ray will freeze the whole place. I will take control of one of the big screens in the city and say that if any heroes other than Endeavor shows up, Reaper will free the hostages. What if Endeavor doesn't show up? Stain asked. He's not stupid. If he didn't show up, his rep would be down the drain, Prometheus said. Yes, now back to what I was saying, Anarchy said. Once Reaper frees the hostages, we will reveal that the one trying to kill Endeavor is none other than Ray. That's when we will expose him for the fraud that he is. After that, Ray will kill him. Just her. What about the rest of us? Dabai asked. You will all be there if more heroes show up. After Endeavor, Anarchy reptiles. At the end of the day, this is Ray's revenge. No one else's. Dabai didn't look satisfied with the answer, but he didn't argue back. As long as he dies, he thought. Once Ray kills him, Reaper warps us all back to base. Anarchy finished. So, any questions? What happens if she can't kill him? Stain asked. Then you help her, but she gets the killing blow. Anarchy said. Any other questions? What about All Might? Lockup asked. If he shows up, we're toast. I've already taken care of him. Anarchy said. A few weeks ago I had Reaper take Croc to Wyoming. He didn't manage to kill or injure anyone, but the heroes there aren't equipped to handle him. So since All Might thinks Croc is running loose in America, he's going to be busy on a wild goose chase for quite some time. Is that all? No one said anything. Good. Then rest up. We attack tomorrow.